Yeah, if that makes a little bit of sense. So if we run out of time today, I am happy to come back at some time in the next couple of weeks and we can do another session and finish off. Yeah, that is obviously if you want me back. Yeah,
yes.
So,
we definitely.
so I'm happy to do that. Yeah, so I'm happy to do that. So, and
but Nigel, we can wait for another 2 minutes.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. I'm just going to share a link with everybody so that everybody can open the link. What I've done, most of the resources I'm going to use today, I've put them onto a web page. So there's going to be something, and I'll explain as we go. But I'm just going to send the link now, and then everybody will be able to open it before we start. So I'll just share it in the chat. There we go. So hopefully everybody can see that. Yeah, we'll just wait a couple more minutes. I'm just going to finish off checking the last bits and pieces. I just want to make sure I've got everything queued up and ready. Yes. And we'll start in a minute or so. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, Nega, I just want to give an introduction, then we'll start. Okay.
No problem.
Okay. Teachers, okay, now we have around 40 people are here. Still people are joining. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the another ESS talk conversation that matter. Before we go, essential agreement, I request everyone, please, you need to be switch on your camera throughout the session, so that will make a fruitful session. The session will go 1 hour 30 minutes or 2 hours. It can be expanded another 10 minutes also after 2 hours. Please refrain by asking any questions during the session that do not relate to ESS paper 2. Raise your virtual hand and participate in the session. These are the essential agreement. We'll be following the next for 2 hours. Okay, good. So on behalf of the ESS talk and all the teachers from India around the world, we welcome the Nigel Gardner to this particular long-waited everyone for the session. A highly innovated, educated, experienced with the UK national curriculum, IGCSE, IB, A-level and vocational education. He is specialized in environmental science, biological and general science, teaching international baccalaureate curriculum, IT with the curriculum and e-learning. Teachers, there is actually, I have to tell, I know this is an important Sunday because of 3 reasons. One, this is a Diwali Sunday. Thank you very much to those who know, okay, Diwali is also important coming for this Sunday. And another very important thing, I know today is the match between India and New Zealand, do or die match for India. Okay. And people, I know many people love the cricket, but actually beyond the cricket, you are coming here. I think more than the cricket, people are eager to participate today and watch the Nigel Gardner ESS session. Thank you very much. There is 2 reasons why I invited Nigel Gardner for this particular session. I know one of the important problem or issue challenges all the ESS teacher facing is the ESS paper 2. When I started the IB, okay, ESS paper 2 used to come to my dreams. Okay, how I have to train my students. 9-mark question. Okay, my first year of ESS IB is full of ESS paper 2 dreams. But one important thing, why I've invited Nigel Gardner this particular session, the thing is, I don't know how many of you following his Facebook link, especially ESSpedia. Whatever shares the resources, he shares many resources on the ESSpedia. I take it very serious. Even there are certain resources, even I never found it in anywhere. Each link, what he shares on the ESSpedia is a fantastic one. That each link actually tell how Nigel Gardner actually involved in each and every depth of the knowledge. Another one is, how Nigel Gardner answering for every query. You put any question on ESSpedia Facebook, you will get an extended essay reply from him. That's the one important thing. Nigel Gardner, you can see it. That's the depth of the knowledge. So I'm very happy to invite Nigel Gardner on behalf of you for the next ESS talk. Nigel Gardner, the stage is on yours. You have to unmute yourself now.
Sorry, guys. I'm going to qualify one thing, and I'm going to start off. I'm going to share screens, and as we go, I'm going to qualify one of those comments. Could you make sharing available for me, please, Guru?
I'm done.
Okay, wonderful. So hopefully everybody can see an apple. Yeah, fabulous, 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 fabulous. Let me just alter my screen down a little bit so I can see the slides running. Okay. Right. Okay, so hopefully in the next 2 hours, we're going to get towards the core of paper 2. If we don't get finished today with everything that I'd like to get through, I'm happy to come back at another time and we can carry on, yeah? And I'm going to tell you now, I'm not going to tell you how to teach paper 2. I can't tell you how to teach paper 2. I can give you some tips, some ideas, some ways that I might do it. But as with everything in the IB, it is a personal journey. Yeah, and it's very, very personal. It is a very, very personal journey. I'm going to give you a little bit of background about myself. I've got over 20 years experience in the IB diploma. I've got 20 years experience in environmental systems as it used to be, and environmental systems and societies as it is now. I have a website called sciencebits.com, which was the first website that was available for environmental systems teachers as it was then. That came about because there were no resources at the time. There was no unified set of resources. Anybody who uses the Oxford Course Companion written by Jill, the first chapter, the topic, topic 2, not topic 1, topic 2 is actually my website. Because when Jill wrote it, it was dropped on Jill's lap when the change happened from systems to ESS. And Jill had 3 months to produce the textbook the first time. It's altered a lot since that first version. If you ever find a first copy of it, yeah, and you have a look through, yeah. But I'm not an author of it because there were already authors of it. But and ESS is like that. The reason I raise that is not because I'm brilliant or a genius or anything. ESS, because of the way that it's developed over the years, is really a subject where people share. It's a community inside the community of the International Baccalaureate. I am a school principal that teaches. Yeah. If your head of school does not teach, sack them. Every head of school should teach. It's the only way you stay connected with the chalk face. Yeah. And if your head of school never comes out of their office, sack them. Yeah. And as a head of school, I really mean that. But what I take great pride in is that, and I'm going to be a little bit egotistical on this, at the moment, I think I am the only person in Asia Pacific that's authorized 3 separate IB diploma schools in the last 10 years. The last school that I authorized was in Kerala. And we authorized the day before India went into lockdown. I'm not in the school anymore. I didn't continue my contract because I'm with my family who are based in Indonesia. My wife is a vice principal. She's very much involved with social emotional learning in the IB. If you've read anything about social emotional learning, you've probably read some of my wife's stuff. Both of my children are IB children. My eldest is in the University of Maastricht and is doing artificial intelligence with data engineering. And my daughter's 14-year-old and in the MYP. And that's where I'm going to make the one contradiction to that great introduction that Guru gave to me. I am not a GCSE person. And I'll be honest with you. If I could put a bomb, there is no such thing called Cambridge exams. It's actually Oxford, Cambridge, and the Royal Society of the Arts. In the UK, it's called OCR. And I know quite a few people that work there. I've worked with them in the past. If I could put a bomb in the middle of it and blow it up, I would. Yeah. So I'm not. But by being British, obviously, I have experience inside the British curriculum. Yeah. Interestingly for me, I find it fascinating. I'm not English either. I'm Welsh. That's very, very important. Yeah, because when you play England in cricket, you're not actually playing England in cricket, you're playing England and Wales. Yeah, it's the England and Wales cricket board. It's very, very important. Yeah. And luckily for me, the important day for me was yesterday. We played New Zealand in rugby. We got killed by them, but we played them in rugby yesterday. Yeah. So I've always found it interesting, looking at obviously where everybody's from in the room, that India has become so dominated by an imperial imposition, a colonial exam system, yeah? And interestingly, given the roots of the IB, that the IB hasn't become more in-depth. I'm the founder of Corners Education, yeah? For the last 5 years, I've had my own consultancy while I've been ahead of school as well. But obviously, during the pandemic, I've been doing more consultancy work, and I work with schools around the world. I work with organizations. I'm also the chief education officer of a company called Ascend Now, and I work for them part-time. I'm their educational mentor. So that's part of who I am, but that's not really who I am. Like I said, I'm from Wales, and that's very, very important. Yeah, we're that bit on the side that nobody really knows what it is. Yeah, and the picture that you see there is actually, I grew up there, and I mean there. That's where I grew up. I actually grew up 2 kilometers from that picture. Yeah, so I had a very, very lucky upbringing in a beautiful part of the world, surrounded by environment. And that is part and parcel of who I am, because the other part and parcel of who I am is this. I dropped out of school at 17. I didn't see the point of school. I've got 13 O levels of the old type O level, of which the lowest grade that I've got is an A. At the time, the only grade you couldn't get an A star. So the lowest grade I've got is an A, and I've got 13 of them, but it wasn't difficult. It was exceptionally easy. So I dropped out of school at 17. And I started my own forestry business. And for 15 years, I was in agroforestry and conservation management. And that's my connection with ESS. I come to ESS as somebody who's worked inside the environmental industries. And I'm actually a phytosociologist. Yeah. I have never studied biology. I'm an ecologist with a background in engineering. Forestry is an engineering science. Yeah. And I'm particularly a phytosociologist. I'm fascinated by plant communities. So my background comes from a working background of understanding where this connects. And I think that's quite important in as we go forward. Just before coming up here, like I said, I've been in meetings most of the day today, but I managed to take a little glance at Sky News just before I came up. And obviously, it's the opening of the COP conference. Yeah, that is fundamental. Tomorrow morning, when you go into school, talk to students about what their views are on COP. Because as a 55-year-old, I'm part of the problem of the planet. And it's the younger generation sitting there. I can see a lot of teachers that are probably half my age. Yeah. Even you guys may not have the impact on changing that you might hope, but the students that we teach that are 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, they have to change the world. So I think it's vital. I think it's very, very vital that we do some things. Another string to my bow that might interest you. At the moment, I don't know how many people have heard of Extend Education. Extend Education are a small bespoke publisher based in the UK. They actually print and publish in India. All their stuff's made in India. And in 2018, they produced their first book, which was actually an Environmental Systems and Society test workbook. At the moment, I am the senior editor of the second edition of it to make it much more exam-like. And as you can see there, there's actually a page from the stuff I've been working on over the last week, which is actually a paper 2. Yeah. So the new version is going to be much more like the real papers are, because there's more of them. We know what the system looks like now. It's in place. And we'll look at that in a little bit. And if you buy the textbook, I'm not going to get rich. So this isn't a plea for you to go and buy a textbook. And I really am not going to get rich from it. But it's a really useful resource. Yeah. If you want some more papers, but also hopefully by the end of this, you may not need to. Yeah. So let's really start. Let's really jump in and have a look at it. Okay. I've shared the link with you. Okay. And what I've done, I'm going to change my share a second. And what I've done, I've tried to put everything together into a web page on my web page. Only you guys have got access to this. Nobody else has access to it. Yeah. Yeah. So each of the surveys are linked from there. For some people, they seem to be working. For other people, they don't. I don't know why. Okay. There's some stuff we'll look at later. There's a Google link, and I'm going to put some more links in it tomorrow morning that I just haven't had a chance to get done over the weekend. There is a complete copy of the guide. There are some broken down bits of the guide as well. There's topic 5 and topic 7, because we'll look at those in a little bit. And one of my resources. Yeah. One of the things that I think is important in this, and Guru sort of highlighted it, is that I make all my own resources, including the artwork in them. If I hadn't dropped out of school, I probably would have been a graphic designer, not an environmental systems teacher. Yeah. So those are available, and they're out there. So I'm going to show you how hopefully you can maybe not do exactly the same as this, because this takes out. You wouldn't want to waste your time spending time doing this. Yeah. But maybe how there's more questions than you think there are. That's what I'm hoping that we get to by the end of that. So I'm going to change back again. Okay. And let's really start jumping in. So the first survey question is, yeah, and I'm interested in this. And if you can't fill in a survey, it doesn't matter, because we're going to discuss it. I'm going to try and make this as constructivist as possible. Yeah, I've got opinions, and I'm going to be very careful in this. All the opinions I'll share with you tonight are my opinions. They're not the IB's opinions. They come from quite a long time of being involved in this, but they may not be exactly what the IB would say. Yeah. So I'm going to give everybody, let's say, 1 minute. If you can open the survey, open it, put your thoughts in. What is the purpose of paper 2? Why was paper 2 written? And I'm going to ask for some answers in the chat as well. So if you can't open it, you will have a chance to add your answers. Yeah. So if anybody can't open it and would like to share their thoughts with it, just put your hand up and I'll come to you.
Maybe teachers, you can chat on the chat box also.
Yeah, and in the chat box as well. Yeah, very good, Julie. Yes, in the chat box as well. Yes, that would be great.
So please share your answer on the chat box.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing this and I'm going to go to the survey itself. So as long as I've set this up correctly, let's see, which one is it? There we go. What is the purpose? Okay, it doesn't look like many people are managing to get a chance to actually get into it. Okay, so would anybody like to share what they think the purpose might be?
Come on, teachers, anyone? Yes, Archana, madam. Go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, so hello, everybody.
Hi, Archana.
Hi, Mr. Gardner. I think that ESS is interdisciplinary and it needs to connect all the concepts which we teach them. So paper 2 focuses on the linking of all the concepts. So all the questions which come, they are linked to many units, many topics, many concepts. And also to understand the width and depth of the comprehension of students.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. I think that's correct. Yeah, I think you're right in that. The paper 2 definitely is written from the idea of trying to bring connections. Yeah, trying to make connections. Yeah. Anybody got any other thoughts? Do we have any other thoughts?
Yes, Jitin sir, go ahead, sir. Jitin sir.
Hello, everyone. What I think is that it's probably trying to make linkage and develop understanding in the learners so that they can, let's say we are facing a lot of pollution and all those stuff in environment, they can design their own method, they can develop their own values inside them, and then they can plan in such a way that they are minimizing the kind of pollution which is happening on the earth. And probably they'll be more aware with the things and they can spread it out to the other generation too, which is upcoming for them. So probably
definitely, Jitin. Yeah, definitely. Yes. Yes.
Yes, Shamugapriya madam. Go ahead, ma'am.
Sir, it helps us to connect the students to the real life situation, sir.
Yeah, certainly. Those are all part and parcel of the entire program. Yeah, so they're all part and parcel of the entire program. I don't know how many people are involved in the curriculum review cycle. And if you're not, I'm not sure if there'll be any opportunities in the current curriculum review cycle, but the next curriculum review cycle will start in 3 years' time, 4 years' time because of the delay. Get involved with the curriculum review cycle. It really helps you understand where the background, where the focus is coming from. And you don't have to have years and years of experience in the subject to become part of it. Yeah, there's a range of people involved, a total range of people, but definitely get involved in it. Okay, so inside the chat, and that's so we've got skills, values, shows their understanding of current affairs, holistic understanding, applications of concepts, critical thinking, analysis, and reasoning. Okay, I'm going to give you another possibility. Okay, and this is through being part of the curriculum review cycle. And I never realized this. Yeah, the entire purpose of paper 2 is to separate out the 7s.
Brilliant. Yes.
Yeah. So paper 2 is about this. So, and I'll get onto that in a moment. But one of the things I want to bring back to that is that I want to try and get rid of some misconceptions as well. Yeah. We teach conceptually, but there are also misconceptions. And one of the misconceptions is that environmental systems gets lower marks than biology. It doesn't. Those of you that understand statistics, that's the confidence interval between the marks for May 19 for biology and May 19 for environmental systems. They are the same marks. Statistically, there's no difference between them. Yeah. There's also this misconception that, well, the marks are lower in May because of North America. And they're not. The marks are always lower in November. Always. Yeah. But what's really interesting, if you look at it, and I don't know what sizes your what class sizes you have, but if we just took an average of, say, 20, yeah, class size of 20. Yeah. And I know some of us would be hoping we'd get 20. Some of us would be hoping we'd be as low as 2. Yeah. So, but if we just say 20 as an average, only one person in your class is going to get a 7. That's it. And that's not going to change. And universities like the fact that it doesn't change. Now, again, I'm going to bring this because all of you guys will get what I'm saying when I say this. There is no such thing as toppers in the IB. I don't know what the numbers were for March last year, but for March 2019, there were almost 4,000 toppers in IGCSE in Cambridge. And there were over 2,000 students that got 99%. That's a flawed assessment. The assessment is not doing the job that it was designed for. So part of the reason, and one of the things that I really wanted to take from this is that if your students are not getting that question, and we'll come directly to that in a minute, that 9-mark question, and they're getting 5s and they're getting 6s in it, they're doing very, very well. And I'm going to use one university as to explain this. Yeah. My alma mater is Lancaster. I went to Lancaster because it is the best ecology university on the planet. I'm biased, obviously. Yeah, but it is. It's in the top 10 ecology universities in the world. Yeah. Donald Piggott was there. Some of the greats of ecology in Britain have all been part of Lancaster. Yeah. To get into the School of Biological Sciences to do ecology at Lancaster, you need 2 Bs and an A from A level. You only need 32 points from diploma. Because the tariffs, and I know UCAS tariff is not fair anymore. It used to be fair, it's better. When there is alignment in off-qual in the UK, a 7 at diploma is worth that, and an A star at A level is only worth that. We're pushing kids to a much higher level. And the other thing that's very, very different, standard level in the IB is not the same as A1 in A level. There is no difference in how hard a standard level subject is compared to how hard a higher level subject is. There is just more stuff. And there's more opportunity to go deeper. But the top end, a question that's a 7 is a question that's a 7. It's not easier. And a question that's a 7 in biology, I personally think is possibly a little bit easier than a 7 in environmental systems, for a couple of reasons. So that's a grab. And I will share the presentation with you later. So that's my first thought. Let's have a look at paper 2 itself, though. Okay, so this is very, very important. Okay, this is how I work out how to write a brand new paper. I look at what's gone before, and there's a pattern, and the pattern's the same. And I've just used the 2018 paper, the May 2000, but it follows the same pattern. There are generally, sometimes there's a little bit more, but generally there is actually, no, I'm telling a lie. There is one question in part A that is AO3. That is assessment objective 3. And in part B, the students have to do 4 questions that are assessment objective 3. So that, why is that important? And we'll ignore the survey. Yeah, we're just going to, yeah, because obviously it's not working very, very well. Any thoughts of why that might be important?
Higher order thinking skills.
Sorry, Angela, could you say that again, please?
Is it higher order thinking skills?
It's to do with that, yeah. The paper's about, this is why I said it's about separating out the 6s and 7s. It's about encouraging the visibility of those higher order thinking skills. It's really about that, yeah? And if we have a look at the way that the grades are distributed, there are 20 questions in total, roundabout. So it can be a little bit more, a little bit less, yeah? But there's only ever 5 questions that are AO3. And those 5 questions add up to 36 points out of 65 marks. And if you look at the boundary for a 6, if you only answered the explain question, the 4-mark question, the 2 7-mark questions, and the 9-mark question and got it perfectly right, you would get a 6 without answering anything else. And that's important because, again, unlike a system like Cambridge or ICSE or CBSE, this is criterion reference. So once a student has shown that they're a 6 or a 7 more than once, they're a 6 or a 7. I encourage my students to start with the with part B. So that's the first thought. Part B is very, very important. Yeah. I also think it's the easiest part of the entire exam. And I know that's different to what most people think about it. And we'll start breaking down why. Okay. If we look again at the effect of this, if we take all of the marks together, just for the papers, 32% of the marks available come from the 7 and 9 mark questions only. So a third of all marks available come from that. And again, one of the things, I haven't included a slide in it, but one of the things that mainly American teachers actually find very, very difficult is that the grade boundaries for the 7 are actually quite low. That's because the questions are very hard. The harder the question, the lower your grade boundary. The easier the question, the higher your grade boundary. Unless you want 4,000 people to get an A, and then you make your grade boundary available to everybody. Yeah, not saying that the British education system is twisted towards people getting higher grades, but it is. So if a third of all questions are only coming from the 7 and 9 mark questions, there's a lot of emphasis on it. There's a lot of emphasis on it. And it's important. Sorry, Guru.
Yes, this is this is an excellent perspective. Even IB workshop also, I've never seen this kind of perspective. Brilliant.
When I say I'm an ecologist, what that really means is I do statistics. Ecology is about statistics. Yeah, for my dissertation, I played with big data sets, eigenvalues, eigenvectors, things like that. So there's pictures in there, and the numbers are beautiful. Yeah, but yes, it is. And Guru, you're right. It's something that doesn't come out. And there is a disjoint in the IB between workshop leaders, curriculum development, exam writers, examiners, and the people don't sit down often enough together. So yeah, and it's there. Okay, again, some of you will have seen I've asked a very, very similar question on the Facebook group yesterday. I asked the same question almost for a different reason. Yeah, but have a think about it. Again, we won't bother with a survey. Have a think about it. What percentage of the questions that you ask the students that are going to be marked, that you're going to give them a grade for, are short answer questions? Oh, sorry, guys. Let me go back a sec. Chana, just because your picture's in front of me, because you just happen to be on top, I could see your mouth going as you're working out in your head there. Would you give me? Can you give? Yeah. If you unmute yourself, would you please, and just give me your thoughts on how your spread of it. And I'm only picking on you because I can see your picture.
Okay, you are asking me, Mr. Gardner.
Yeah. So when you're assessing students,
right?
What percentage of the questions you ask them for as assessment are probably short answer?
Short answers means 1 marker, 2 markers for me.
Well, even up to the 4 mark question.
Okay, up to 4 mark questions, I would like for paper 2, it will be around 40%.
Okay. Overall, but how many would you say you ask them overall in the entire program, not just for paper 2?
Okay, no, I have not calculated that way. But for setting up paper 2, I don't go more than 40% for short answers. And short answers means for me 1 marker and 2 marker. I don't include 3 markers and 4 markers, because sometimes in IB papers I've seen that 3 markers are asking for explanations and deeper descriptions. So 1 and 2 markers only not go beyond 40% in my paper. And I design my papers.
Yeah, brilliant, fabulous. Angela, I see, because obviously again you're at because you spoke earlier. I saw you were going to say about the same.
I said most of it short.
Yeah. So we've got a range of views in there, okay? And in the room, people are saying 35%, 40% short answers. Yeah. If you think about it, flip it the other way, at least 32% of the questions you ask students should be the 7 and 9 mark questions. Should be. Yeah, they should be at least that, yeah? So that's one thought to think about as we go through this. And I'm going to try and link something. And I really like, I love Bloom's taxonomy. I love Bloom's taxonomy because it makes total sense. And again, if you look at our assessment objectives, we can sort of align those with Bloom's taxonomy. So at the very, very bottom, which is just basic remembering, we're only sort of at assessment objective 1, and we're only getting a grade 1. And at the very, very top end of it, at the top end of AO3, where we're evaluating, justifying, and synthesizing, well, then we're getting 7s. And that's a hard skill. And I believe in kind cruelty sometimes. You've got to be honest with your students that the chance of them getting a 7 is not massive. Yeah. But getting the grade that they've worked towards and worked really, really hard should be really celebrated. And I have Bloom's taxonomy up in my room all the time. And I use it with the students for them to question whether they think that when they're answering, are you really evaluating? Are you really justifying? Are you really synthesizing that knowledge? Are you taking it and doing something else with it? Yeah. And I'm going to let you into a new thought. This is a thought that I've been developing in my head. And it's one of the reasons I actually asked the question in the ESS group yesterday. It's linked a little bit this, but it's not linked directly to paper 2, but it still works in the same sort of way. Evaluate contains explain. And explain contains describe. And describe contains outline. And outline contains define. And define contains state. But if you look where the AOs are for them, AO1 covers both state and define. And AO2 covers both outline and describe. They're the top and bottom ends of that AO. And explain and evaluate cover AO3, and they're the top and bottom ends of AO3. So if a student is going to get a 7, they must be able to evaluate. Just being able to explain is not going to be enough. They've got to be able to evaluate. They've got to be able to take apart. They've got to be able to pull it apart. And this is the new thought I've had. And I think it might be the only original thought I've ever had in my life. And eventually I'm going to find that somebody else has already thought of it. Yeah. We talk about constructivist education, but most of the time, most of our education is reductionist. Yeah. If we're continually trying to get students to build from state to define, to outline, to describe, to explain, to evaluate, they're not going to do it. We have to work the opposite way. We have to get students taking apart answers, taking apart questions and turning them into their constituent parts to understand what makes that question. Why did that answer get those marks? Does that make a little bit of sense? I think I may have just, there we go. See, we tend to do that all the time. We tend to build from the bottom up. And it is only over the last month or two, I've started to think really, going the wrong way. I don't want to go that way yet. I think we should be doing the building down, that we should be taking apart rather than trying to build up. So that has an impact on practice as well, on the way that we teach. Yeah. So I'll skip that. And that's what we tend to do. We tend to try and go from lots and lots of state. Interestingly, in the survey that I asked in the Facebook group, I've got to get this right. Out of the people that answered, 36 of them said they mainly use questions that are sort of AO2. And only 5 people said they use questions that are AO3 as their main assessment source. The question was a little bit different. I asked them what was their main. Yeah. But that's quite interesting, because if you're not asking AO3 questions, you can't actually be giving the students the opportunity to try and get there. Yeah.
Nigel?
Yes.
Hi, Sumit.
Hi, Sumit.
Yes, I agree with you on that part, but I also think that, you know, teachers are using questions which they tend to borrow from the exams. But I think where the point is missed is the fact that the students are not able to articulate their knowledge and conceptually connect the examples. And that's probably from the fact that teaching is, as you said, is largely deductive rather than being inductive. So it's very important that teachers move away from this idea that they have to put out a PowerPoint where everything is put out, all the matter that they're going to teach is on that PowerPoint, and then expect students to follow on. And that to me defeats the purpose of having an inductive method or constructivist approach.
Totally. So totally.
So that's where I think we go terribly wrong. I don't think teachers, I think teachers are highly skilled in using past papers and making their question papers. I think everybody here is pretty much very skilled in that. But I guess, as you said, that hitting the top marks or hitting the top level 7 requires them to have sort of an inductive way to teach things, not to give the facts and then try to ask students, because that's not constructivist enough. And that then they struggle to, you know, articulate their understanding if the examples are unrelated. Yeah, if they're not from their Pearsons, if it's not from the Cambridge, if it's not from the Oxford book, if it's anything from the outside, I don't think they're able to articulate. And for them, it's just gone. And that's my experience of marking.
Yeah, totally right. I totally agree with you. I'm gonna go towards there in a little bit, but I agree with you. And hopefully, I'm going to show my way of getting round that. Yeah. One thing that I do find really, really interesting is textbooks themselves. Whilst I've contributed to textbooks, I have never had a textbook in any classroom I've ever worked in. And as a head of school, even as diploma coordinator, when I can, I ban them from the entire school because of that problem of teaching from the textbook. Yeah. Now, one of the things that I think is, and this is going to sound like a criticism, and it's not a criticism. It really, really is just an observation. I would guess that probably 99.99% of us sitting in this Zoom meeting at the moment were taught in a didactic method, that we learned knowledge to regurgitate knowledge. And our teacher training was training for a system that was about regurgitative knowledge. So when we start teaching regurgitative knowledge. And Ken Robinson said something. I'm going to change a little bit what he said, but Ken Robinson said one of the problems with education is that everybody has been taught. So everybody has an opinion on what good education should be, but it comes from their own experience of education when they were in school. I think the biggest problem with education is that teachers have been taught, and teachers teach subjects that they were good at. I'm going to suggest, and I try to do this every now and again, je parle un peu de français. My French is terrible, but every now and again I go and try and teach ab initio French. My maths is pretty good, but I really hate calculus. Yeah. And every now and again, I go and teach a little bit of calculus. I find biology the most boring subject on the planet. So boring, it's so dry, and especially human biology. I couldn't care less about humans. I'd much rather spend my time with plants. Yeah. But I teach biology. Yeah. So I think getting out of that comfort zone and seeing what it's like to teach another subject is only going to help your practice in your own subject.
I agree, Nigel.
Yeah. But I know many schools are very frightened of that idea. Yeah. So, and I think, yeah, I think you're really right. Okay. Let's jump back to this a second, because I will I'm going to get to where you just said, actually, and you've preempted where I'm going, which is great. Yeah, because I'm never quite sure where people are when I do things like this. Yeah, if we look at the mark scheme for the 9-point question, so I'm only going to deal with the 9-point question, and I'll mention the 7-mark one as we go along. But if we deal with the 9-point one, we've got to deal with the 7-mark as well. And we'll be dealing with the 4-mark from paper 1 actually as well. Yeah. If you look at it in terms of, so what I've done here, I've turned it upside down. I've turned it into Bloom's taxonomy. I wish the IB would stop putting 1 and 3 at the top of the page and put 7 and 9 at the top of the page. Because really we want our students to be heading towards 7 and 9, not concentrating on how to get a 1 and a 3 first, then how do I get a 4 and a 6, and then and that's coming back to that difference between deductive and inductive, something that you would draw about. So I think that's very, very important that we really start and aim high. Yeah. So this slide keeps reappearing. It shouldn't be there. I thought I deleted it. Sorry, guys. I have no idea what the C was going to be. And I put it in there and then changed my mind. I can't even remember what it was going to be. Yeah. Okay. So one of the questions, Ashana mentioned that she makes her own questions, that makes her own papers. Where do you get your questions from? Anybody like to say? Go on, Ashana, go on.
Yeah, Nigel, sorry to interrupt. But what I have understood is that after checking the paper 2 for over 10 years now, and being TOK teacher, I could very well reduce the substance of each unit. And I have seen teachers finding it difficult to connect the units. They go by the units, the flow of the textbook. But my chapters are, or my course is intermix of all.
Yes, brilliant.
So I do not teach in separation. Any topic.
Fabulous, fabulous.
So therefore, I can make my own questions. I mean, I'm talking about the 7 and 9 markers very easily. Okay, and my questions which I make, they have come from the practice, seeing the question papers from past years of IB, and that guides me what should be asked in 7 and 9 markers.
Yeah.
So I need to see that the concepts which I'm giving in a single question, they should be synthesized. They should be very, very closely interlinked. Then evaluation from the child side can be easily happen. I mean, I see the easiness because I create my case studies. All of my case studies, I'm based in India. My case studies are more or less coming from Indian problems, environmental problems. So my students are kindly connected to the case studies which I give them. So, I mean, chunking my questions is very easy. As you said that you are trained for ecology, I'm a field geomorphologist by nature and by my practice and my studies, past studies. So it comes very easy for me to make the question paper. And I understand this, and I've taught geography, I have taught ESS, I have taught TOK, I'm teaching as well, and I've taught global politics. So all these perspectives come very easily for me. I don't figure out. Sometimes it becomes very strenuous because the group which I get, sometimes some students are not able to understand, but largely it is an easy job for me.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've got to be honest. I'm going to offer to swap seats with you in a minute, because yeah, it is very much that. And I teach TOK as well. Oddly, so you mentioned, I'm going to go off the side. I tend to do this. I've just booked flights to go back to France for Christmas, and I live at the end of a gorge. We've got some beautiful folding. We've got some of the best karstic folding examples you can ever see. So what I'll do, I'll take some pictures and send you some beautiful pictures of beautiful folding in the limestone that we've got in our valley. It's fabulous. Yeah, totally off the side. Yeah. Yes, it is that. I've taught geography as well, and I think that adds to it. I don't know how many teachers come from a group 4 background only. So how many teachers actually come from the biological sciences in the room? But if you come from the biological sciences, go and talk to your business management teachers, your economics teachers, your geography teachers about the approach that they take, because obviously this is a interdisciplinary subject. Yeah. And Charlotte, thank you for saying that. That's so true. Anybody, all right, I keep forgetting to check in the chat room. Somebody says if they have doubts about framing the 9-mark question. Yeah. So I'll come on to that. I'm going to go there in a second. As well about that. Who uses only past paper questions? Does anybody only use past paper questions? If you don't use past paper questions, where do you get the other questions from?
Nigel, I think everybody uses past paper questions.
But I mean, only past paper question. Shivani, you put your hand up.
Yes.
So that's the biggest resource we have. Best of the things, for so many years, so many teachers are relying on that. So past papers are the biggest resource for a teacher to set up their own papers.
Okay,
Mix and match gives a better option for us to cater the needs of the child. So.
Fabulous. Jitan, you put your hand up as well.
What actually I do for the paper 2 is that I just go through the questions of past paper, but I try to make my own questions from it instead of just directly taking questions from there. And especially for the questions which have, and there are so many marking schemes available. The students for the online examinations, they are very clever enough to just quickly go to these sites and just take on their papers and just copy exactly the same answers. So,
can I jump in a second? I personally don't see anything wrong with that. I give all my students every past paper at the start of the course, and I give them the mark schemes for every past paper question. Because if you think about it, we do the same. We give them textbooks, and we don't worry about them learning paragraphs from the textbook, because the chances of the question coming up again to be a deep question is slim. You're right. So if you change the question, I'm not saying don't change the question. I think that's really, really good. But I don't really see a problem with giving them all the answers at the start, because they're not going to get those deep questions again. And the simple questions, the 1-mark questions, are going to come up again. So it's fairly good revision. Yeah, it is a good way to revise. So I wouldn't worry too much about them getting them. In fact, I give them. Yeah. And I would encourage people. Yeah, go on. Sorry, yes.
I think the C questions, the mark schemes that you see for the C questions are usually suggestions.
Yes.
Because at the start, they give you a skeleton of what a mark band looks like, and then they give you suggestions. So it doesn't really matter, I mean, what kind of questions you're setting, because the basic skeleton is the same. And we use a lot of professional judgment when we mark C questions, because it's not a lot about regurgitating. It's about connecting the dots. And I really like the fact that Archana said that she uses local examples. I strongly encourage teachers to use local examples.
Yes, very much so.
Students could connect from a geographic standpoint, from an economic standpoint, from a political standpoint. And most of the answers are not really, one discipline driven. We have to move away from that mentality that, we are teaching the students, oh, I'm a biologist and I have to teach my subject from that perspective. I think you have to wear the multidisciplinary hat all the time. And you have to train your students to think multidisciplinarity.
Which is why earlier I make the argument that standard level environmental systems is possibly harder than standard level biology.
I agree. I agree totally. I think biology goes according to the mark scheme. I mean, if you write those 10 points, you get those 10 marks. But here it's not that simple.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah. And there's a lot of argument, let me tell you, from the standardization perspective. There's a lot of argument that happens behind the scenes regarding 7 to 9 mark band. And we argue a lot about whether to give a child a 6 or a 7 or an 8 or a 9.
Yeah, totally, I agree. Yeah.
And there's a lot of perspective. Yeah. And each year the principal examiner changes.
Yeah.
Sometimes
I'm going to throw something the other way. There's actually a lot of argument in the curriculum writing part of it about deciding what will become the 7 mark questions, the 7 and 9 mark questions. Yeah. I'm gonna introduce an idea, and I don't know, and I'm hoping that people have thought of this before, but if people haven't, don't sit there and think, why haven't I ever thought about it before? Yeah. Somebody sort of showed me how to get towards this. Yeah. And it wasn't an original thought of mine. It was a synthesis from somebody else's thought. It was from something that a guy called Stephen Taylor was doing in biology, made me think about something in system. It wasn't even societies then, it was systems. It was that long ago. And there we go. Our normal paradigm is that we have a sequence, the topics, and we have the scope of them. So how much does that topic have in it? Whereas from what Sumit just said, and Archana just said, what we really have instead is the connection bit as well. There's 3-dimensionality in it. And a lot of thought goes into this. So in December, actually November, December, this time last year, I was part of the last working group for the curriculum review. And it was a very odd curriculum review because it was entirely online and lasted 5 weeks rather than 4 days. Yeah. And nothing really gelled or synthesized or came together until we actually did the group meetings in December. And one of the thoughts that came out, and it wasn't one of my thoughts, that I was thinking it, but one of the thoughts was that somebody turned around and said, why can't we turn the guide into a 3-dimensional thing? The problem is that our guide is 2-dimensional. And with having to try and put a 2-dimensional map on top of a 3-dimensional course. Yeah. And that's especially when new teachers starting off. I'm guessing the same channel as yourself, probably somewhat the same as yourself. I never teach topic 1. Topic 1 is throughout the entire course. And it's important that it is throughout the entire course. And if you don't do but it's hard for new teachers starting off. It's difficult, yeah? And we've got to start thinking this terms of connectivity. So I'm going to throw a question at you. So May 19, question 6C. Even though there is a growing global support for economic values, the global consumption of fossil fuels continues to rise each year. With reference to energy choices in named countries, discuss possible reasons for this situation occurring. I'm going to jump forward a little bit and look. The IB has already told you every question they're going to ask. Every question has been written for that 7-year cycle already. They're in the applications. They're already sitting there. Evaluate energy strategies for a given society with reference to named countries. It's all in there. It's already there.
Brilliant. Fantastic.
Yeah. There's nothing hidden in what the IB are trying to do. But I will be honest, I think the IB make a really bad job of explaining this.
I agree, Nigel.
Yeah, totally make a really bad job of explaining. And something the same as yourself. I've sat in the senior meetings in Cardiff when of grade awarding and stuff. And yeah, sometimes it's a meat market. Yeah, yeah, but it's there. So let's take this a little bit further. So look, discuss the factors that affect the choice of energy sources adopted by different societies. So the choices bit is there. Factors is there. Yeah, possible reasons. It's already there. That question came out of 7.1. I'm going to say a word of caution. Most of the application questions as they are 7-mark questions. They're not 9-mark questions. The 9-mark question comes about by pulling bits together, by taking the bits. So 7.1, so in our knowledge and understanding, we've got fossil fuels contribute, blah, blah, blah. Energy security depends on adequate. Energy choices adopted. And then in the guidance, you've got to look at the strengths and weaknesses. And even in that international mindedness, the choice of energy. So there's a lot of information inside there. Yeah. But what we tend to do as teachers, because we're always busy, we have all sorts of things to do. Schools are asking us to do things that are outside of the classroom, is that when we're stuck for time, we tend to jump at that knowledge and understanding and throw up a presentation and go through the presentation. Yeah. Over the last couple of years, I've been on a course at Harvard. And one of the things that comes out of that course a lot in one of the modules of it is about how much time as teachers we actually waste talking. Do what I'm doing now, talking too much. Yeah. As opposed to letting the students actually get to the answers. So the guy's telling you what the guide's already got a lot of the information in there. It's not hidden. Yeah. So if you then take the mark scheme and put the mark scheme against the guide, and I give my students the mark scheme and I give them the guide and I go and find it. Where did it come from? Look for the words. Yeah, alternative energies, renewable, non-renewable, fossil fuel technologies, environmental factors. Yeah. And there's this interplay and overlap. And that's when the students start to pull it together. Yeah. And I'm guessing the only difference that I've made in the way that I think about it is I've got OCD. So I tend to spend hours and hours trying to think about where these bits are. Yeah, it's much more fun than Sudoku. It's much more fun. Yeah. Go in there and pulling these bits out of it. Yeah. And topic one.
It's a nice OCD, Nigel. I think it's a nice OCD, which all the teachers should definitely have. Because I think this guide is the most underused document. And I'm saying this from experience of leading Category 1 and Category 2 workshops. And I'm surprised that even teachers who spent, I don't know, probably 2 decades, probably older than I am. They've spent a lot of time, literally creating amazing PowerPoint presentation with the textbooks rather than actually engaging with the guide. And I think this is the most underrated and underused document. Yeah, and I'm glad that you are doing this and opening this up.
Thank you so much.
I couldn't have emphasized this more in my workshops. But yeah, I'm glad that you presented it, blown it up in this manner where you're presenting the mark scheme side by side with the guide and where does it come from.
Yeah, and it's all in there. It's there already. Yeah, it's all in there already. I have an opinion. It's my opinion, and I'm happy to say this. And I'm gonna cover my opinion by saying one thing first. You can't make a circle with pi. So the most underused guide is actually in group 6. That's what I think. That's my opinion. Yeah, I get what you're saying. I think it's
underused in all the subjects, Nigel. Trust me.
Totally, it is. Totally.
Nobody bothers. It's to look at this document, and I would just like to say that when these guides are published and printed, they undergo updating every year, and I would like to request the teachers here to look at the latest guide and not just Google it, but look at the latest guide on My ID. I'm sure you guys have access to it, because it says there, last updated April 2021, last updated May 2020. So please look at the latest one.
There's been, because I've been, like yourself, I've been in some of those meetings as well, and I'll second what Sumit's saying there, is that there's been lots of discussion over the years about whether the guide should be a printed guide or the electronic one. And the reason for the push for the electronic one is so that when mistakes are spotted, they can be changed easily and quickly. I don't know how many diploma coordinators we have in the room, but diploma coordinators, you get to know when that happens. It's in the notes that go out to diploma coordinators. But it's now also on the front of when you sign in to MyIB. It tells you that there's been a change, so that teachers get to see it.
Yeah, I think everybody has access to it, Nigel, at the moment. Yeah. All the documents which a diploma coordinator specially gets is available to everybody.
Yes, so totally.
There's no speciality anymore. There's no eliteness anymore in being a diploma coordinator.
Don't say that. Don't say that. It's like I've made an entire career out of it, of making it look like magic. Don't say that.
I served as a coordinator.
Don't say it's easy.
I served as a coordinator, so I could say that with ease, because I did that quite a lot with my colleagues. So I think there's no eliteness. But anyway, that's my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Thanks,
I'm sorry, Nigel, it affects your business. But
no, it's totally true. Yeah, that. A good coordinator shouldn't be doing that. A good coordinator should be making the pedagogy. The pedagogy of the school is good. Yeah. So there is, So now, and the other thing, I don't know if I've said this, topic 1 is in everything. Topic 1's everywhere. So always go back to topic 1. Yeah. Okay. I need to just have a look to check that I am actually where I am in because I want to check that the next slide I've got is the slide I think it is, as opposed to the slide that it might be. Right, it's the slide that I thought it wasn't, but it doesn't matter. Okay, so if you've got your guide there with you, I altered this afternoon. I've gone back to what the version that I originally had. So if you've got your guide with you, May 21 had this question: discuss the role of feedback mechanisms in maintaining the stability and promoting the restoration of plant communities threatened by human impacts. Which topics does that come out of?
7.2.
Ooh, 7.2. Okay, so we've got 7.2. And there's going to be differences in this because there is no one right answer. Somebody said topic 2 and 3. We've got 7.2.
Topic 1 as well.
Topic 1 as well. Okay, topic 1.
Mechanisms.
Thank you, Poonam. That's great. So somebody said 1, 2, and 3. Topic 3. My thoughts. My thoughts, it's 1 point, mainly coming, not only, but mainly coming from 1.3 and 2.4. Yeah. But that doesn't mean that topic 7 isn't part of it and can't be part of the answer. It doesn't mean that topic 3 can't be part of the answer. It just happens to be because of my background in phytosociology, I'm going to always start with succession. I'm always going to start with biomes. That's my obsession. Yeah. So I'd approach it in that direction. Yeah. And then I'd go and look at which applications. And I'm going to start breaking it down. And I'm going to sit there and try and look at it. So within this, we've got these applications. So in biomes, zonations, and succession, we've got quite a few there. Yeah. But I could break it down into the fact that I think it actually pulls two of them together. It pulls discuss the factors that lead to alternative stable states. So as you can see, I've highlighted stability. We're talking about alternative communities, alternative states, and the link between ecosystem stability, succession, diversity, and human activity. And the root stem of it, the command term is discuss. So there's a high likelihood that when the examiner was writing that question, they were actually had that page open. It's quite possible. And of course, because it's feedback mechanisms, well, we've got 1.3. And if you read the guidance, if you read the guidance says there is no one climax community. As a successional ecologist, it's actually the only bit of the guide that's actually telling the truth about succession. Yeah, but it's true. There isn't one type, but rather alternative stable states in a given ecosystem. That depends on climatic factors. Yeah, human activity is one factor that can divert it. So immediately by going to the guidance in there, you're starting to pull apart what needs to be put into that question to answer it. And again, it's only one part, or only one pathway, not one part, one pathway to get to the answer. Because there are multiple possibilities for this. Yeah. And to me, what that question's asking is about this diagram that I stole from somewhere years ago and redrew, which is about secondary succession. We're talking about diverted states. Yeah. And we should really have already taught that question. Because if we've been using these applications, we must have discussed factors that lead to alternative stable states. And we must have discussed these links between stability, succession, diversity, and human activity. So by using the applications and the skills rather than the knowledge, we must be teaching the questions that are going to come up. I am obsessed. Sorry, let me just say one sentence. I am obsessed by succession, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, Sumit, go on.
Can you show the diagram again?
There we go.
Yeah, I think teachers should encourage students to visualize when they are writing. This is a classic example of how planning an answer looks like. Yeah. I mean, if a student has if they've really unpacked the question, like if this question is unpacked by the kid, then they should be able to draw a diagram like this, which Nigel has shown. Yeah. And they would be able to articulate a good answer if they are able to produce this diagram.
Yeah, I got to be honest. I don't mark very often anymore because I do so many other things. Yeah, and I don't swear very often, but I really do swear when I sit there and go, "Why didn't you put a bloody diagram?" You sit there, and some of you probably have the same experience. You're sitting there as a marker, going like, "Oh, why didn't you've used 10,000 words when a diagram would have done it beautifully?" And we're supposed to be teaching kids how to model this stuff.
Because Nigel, I'll tell you, recently there's a lot of discussion when a student represents everything in the diagram and it does the job of answering the question. To me, that's a no-brainer. But what has happened over the years, the examiners and the perspective shared by principal examiner is that they need to be able to articulate in order to hit the 7 to 9 mark band, their ideas in form of paragraphs. And I keep arguing with them. I said it doesn't really matter in what format the kids are answering as long as they demonstrate the understanding. And this is what I would urge all my colleagues here, all my esteemed colleagues here, that do not stop your students from using their creativity. Let them answer the way they want to, but instead strengthen them with a more conceptual understanding of the topic, because I think that's more essential.
I will add one caveat on that. They have to be able to annotate it really well as well. Yeah. So the annotation is what makes the difference. Yeah. The diagram on its own is not. Yeah. It's just a really good. But the annotation can really bring it to life. And I agree with you. So I'm going to talk you through. I'm going to try and talk you through the way that I teach it. But this is not the way that I teach it, because I couldn't think of a way to actually do it in a flat format that did it justice to the way that I tend to teach it. So I'm going to try and talk you through that. Okay. So the first thing is, go back to this thing. Yeah. I use mainly case studies where I am teaching, but I just happen to live in a very beautiful part of the world. And at the moment, I'm part of a long-term research project looking at succession in a particular ecosystem. Yeah. So for this one, I just happen to use my holiday pictures. Yeah. When we talk about succession, the way that I teach it is, again, something I stole off Stephen Taylor. The students get a set of worksheets before the unit, and they complete all of the AO1 questions before class. And we only deal with AO2 and AO3 questions in class. And we try to do it by breaking down those questions. So the entire lesson, the entire class is questions. It's not delivery. So they've already done this, they've already got it, and they know about the fact that I'm obsessed with with succession in this ecosystem. Yeah. And the ecosystem is called the Garrigue. Other point of interest, one of the things I keep on trying to change in the IB is the fact that we need more biomes than 6. The Garrigue fits in grassland, but it's actually got this. The Garrigue is one of the Mediterranean type ecosystems, as the second highest biodiversity on the planet. And we don't include chaparral as a biome. Yeah. So again, there are different ways of looking at things. Yeah. So this is how I teach those 2 application points, but I can't do it in the same way. And these are the questions. That's a picture that's 2 kilometers from my house. What can you see? Why has this happened? And the students will talk about, well, there's a field there, so they've cut down the forest. And I'll go, no, not the field. What can you see behind the field? And they go, oh, there's a forest. And I'll go, yes, so? Oh, there's 2 different types of trees. Yeah, why? And we'll do a little bit about zonation, the fact that the trees are in different zones there because if you look, the slope is slightly different. So the actual drainage is different. Yeah, and it's the Pyrenees. So on the top of the slope, you get a much drier community than you do on the lower slopes. And I thought, so why has that happened? Yeah, why is there still forest there? Hasn't been cut down. There wasn't actually, guys, there wasn't forest there 100 years ago. Oh, it's grown back. All right, so it's grown back. Okay, so what can you see? What has happened? And that's probably about 4 kilometers, maybe 3 kilometers. Yeah. The hill behind, again, a little aside, the hill behind is where in 2012 the world was going to end. It's called Bugarach. Yeah. And there were thousands of people up there on New Year's Eve waiting for the world to end, and it didn't. Yeah. So again, the students will go, well, there's sheep in there, or are they cows? And it's been cut, and what's happened? Why is it different? The farmers cut the field, they cut the trees down, blah, blah, blah. And we get to there, yeah? And then we move on a little bit and go, okay, what can you see? What has happened? And they'll talk about the cows being in there, and the cows are eating the grass. And I'll throw in, well, what about the trees? Well, can the cows eat the trees? This sort of thing. We'll have an interplay a little bit. And every time I ask the questions, they're a little bit different. What would happen if you took the cows away? And hopefully the students will have read about the idea of secondary succession. And they'll have read all my notes about what's been happening with rural depopulation in the Garrigue, and the fact that because of changes in agricultural practice, that the ecosystem is slowly changing back to, is slowly being rewilded, which is absolutely destroying the biodiversity. Yeah. And some of them will talk about that, and we'll have a chat about it. And then the next question will be the sort of what and the why happens in there. And we'll get some sheets of A3 paper and we'll scribble notes on it. Actually, they'll scribble notes on it. I don't do very much. They do all the work. And the question is, so not all of the plants have been eaten. Why haven't all the plants been eaten? But if I wanted to really get rid of all the plants, how could I do it? And we'll have a bit of a discussion, and I'll throw them my ideas at it. The plants that aren't eaten have got thorns, and if we really wanted to get rid of everything, we just plough it, which is what happens. There's vineyards in the area as well. Yeah. So we're talking about this backwards and forwards and trying to consider what's happening in the ecosystem. And then what would happen if you took the cows away? What would happen if you then put more cows on? What would happen if you took the cows away? What would happen if you put more cows on? What would happen if you took the cows away? And every time I do this, there's always one student who turns around and goes, "You're talking about alternating. What would happen if you alternate between having cows and not having cows?" And they'll want to impress their teacher with the knowledge that they've got, and they'll start talking about this. And they'll start talking about tipping points. And I'll put this up there and I'll go, okay, so look, tell me what happens. And somebody will go up to the board with a pen, and one of them will write no cows, and one of them will write cows. And then I'll go, what do we call this line? It's the equilibrium. And what do we know is happening when you see this model? And we've used the model so many times that they'll go, well, it's negative feedback. And then I'll show them this, which is a model, not my model, I stole it, of what actually happens inside the Garrigue, which is actually this model itself, but it's with the detail on it. So you cut the forest down. You have to start with this grey looking one. You don't actually start over here. You cut the forest down, which was a climax forest, and then it's grazed by goats and cattle. And that keeps the vegetation low, but you reduce the grazing pressure and the vegetation starts growing back, and tree saplings establish that the cows can't eat. And so you end up with secondary succession that leads to a climax state. But if you cut it down again, yeah, but if you have continued grazing, you end up with a Garrigue community. So we work our way through the map of trying to explain this. And then we bring in the guide, and every one of my students has a printed copy of the guide, which I expect them to make notes in. When I have the budget, I print it on A3. If I don't have the budget, I go and get it printed anyway, if I can, yeah? But A3 is great, but I printed A4 on A3, if that makes sense. Yeah. And we look at it, and then I get them to answer these questions, discuss the factors that could lead to alternative stable states, and discuss the links between ecosystem stability, And they've got to use the Garrigue as the ecosystem they're talking about. And when that question came up, I thought, whoa, we've been answering that question for years. Because it's in there. Yeah. So it's about looking at it. And eventually we go back to the original picture and one of them go, well, that's climax community 1 and that's climax community 2. They're 2 different alternative stable states. And that's sort of how we bring them in. Yeah. Okay. Going to do the same again. Okay. Climax can both influence and be influenced by terrestrial food production systems. To what extent can terrestrial food production strategies contribute to sustainable equilibrium in this relationship? I put this one in because I actually found this one tough. I found this one quite hard to link together. Any thoughts, guys? Anybody had inspiration and it's just jumped out at them?
Yeah, topic 5, I guess. Topic 5 and 7.
Topic 5 and 7. And I wanted to think about that. For some reason, I want to get topic 8 into there as well. Yeah. I personally can't. I find it hard to squeeze topic 8 into there. But this is where I ended up. So
Nigel, this was the least attempted question.
But it shouldn't have been. But the reality is it shouldn't have been.
Yeah, but it was.
Yeah. Yeah, it shouldn't have been. Yeah. And it is because, again, it's all in there. Yeah. So factors comparing and contrasting food production inputs, which include, yeah, rainfall and irrigation, which is obviously rainfall is part of the atmospheric production. Yeah. And we've got strategies to increase sustainability in terrestrial food productions. Yeah. Mitigation strategies. Yeah, then we've got the guidance in 7.2 and the discuss the feedback mechanisms that would be associated with the changes in it. And if you go to the, I don't know if I put the slide in. I may not have done that. Let me just check on my running order. I just want to have a check to see in case I did. And I also tend for groups to print off the mark scheme answer as A4 on A3. So when the students attempt to take this question apart, when they attempt to deconstruct it, what they can do is this. And admittedly, this isn't the handwritten version. I just use one of those funny fonts that look a little bit like handwriting. But the students I try to encourage the students to use the guide to guide them. What is it that we're really trying to get in there? Because if the students can find their way around the guide, they can go and check that what they're actually talking about is part of the guide. Yeah. So we can actually construct practice that gives our students much better chance of being able to answer these. And I have no proof at all of this. But I really believe that if you did nothing other than give the students the application questions and taught the skills, that you actually cover the entire content without having to teach the content. Because those application questions were written to embrace the content, which is probably a very different way to which most of us, including me, for lots of the time, tend to teach the course. For all sorts of reasons. Yeah? Guru, your question?
Yes, Nigel, I have 2 things I want to understand. So can you go to the previous slide?
Yes, certainly, buddy, certainly. Let me go back a second. That one.
Okay, so can I tell, so the people who sitting in the Cardiff making the IB ESS question paper, they use the subject guide. Am I right?
Yes.
Okay. Number two question. So you actually given the points how I can make my students to think, but how I can make my students to write what IB wants, because if I have a class 20 students, everyone will give the different answer, but what IB is expecting is totally different. So how I can train my students what IB need in the answer?
It's Samit, do you want to answer it? Because I don't mark paper 2 very often anymore, and you're much more au fait with the actual marking progress at the moment. Because I would say it's not like that.
No, it is not like that. And Guru, let me tell you, IB is not looking for something special. It is not. And let me tell you, any example that a teacher teaches, whether local or whether that is very, very much so that they have done in their classroom, is accepted and is acceptable. So there's no perfect way to represent your knowledge in C question. There isn't one. There simply isn't. And it's just such how the students can connect these dots that Nigel has blown up in front of us right now. You know, the points that he has shown here. It's these points, how well students can articulate them in their own examples, that they have studied. For example, now, Nigel showed us the community which is local to him. You can talk about a community local to you, like Sundarban or Western Ghats.
Yes, totally.
And use them as your examples. And as examiners, I can tell you there are many times, I mean, we are not supremely blessed with all the examples in our head. We have to Google them too. Because sometimes students write examples which are not which we do not teach normally, right? They will have examples from Australia. They will have examples from some other part of the world, which are not represented in the textbooks or not represented normally and it's highly local, and we have to Google them. So Guru, there's no exact way as such, but it's just that how well students can use and drive that example. For example, if they've used a local one like Sundarban or Western Ghats, it's how they, you know, articulate their understanding of this.
Yeah, and I think actually using the framework that's in the answer may include. So
yeah,
how well are they using the terminology and the concepts?
Yeah.
If I may, Nigel, how are they addressing it? Yeah, sorry, Sumit. Yes.
Yeah, if I may, I mean, trust me, we mark very generously.
Yes.
We mark very generously. And even though this mark scheme tells you the structure that we are expecting, a lot of times we don't get this structure. It's not a reality. It's simply not the reality. So we award the benefit on the ground of the merit of the answer itself. So it does not have to follow this structure. For example, a lot of students start with definitions. So they put the definitions on the top.
Yeah.
So if the question says sustainability, they get very excited. They'll put the definition of sustainability on top. So what they're basically trying to do, they're securing the bottom of the pyramid. That means they're securing the AO1 and AO2 first, even before they could secure the AO3. So they're more into AO1 first. So they will define sustainability. They'll define terrestrial food production system. So they secure their points, and then they try to deal with the example. And this, if I could go ahead and say that if a child uses the example and then builds the answer around the example, that's the answer usually getting 7 to 9.
Yes.
Mostly 8 and 9.
Yeah. It's when there isn't an example in there, it's really hard to hang it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what are you even talking about?
Yeah.
That's why they say named country, named ecosystem, named food production system, named, soil system. They always use the word named because they're trying to give hint to the student that we want you to write an example and develop that idea around that example. And that's generally the separation between 7s, 8s, and 9s. Most students with normal answers fall in the range of 4 to 6.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, unless a student is intentionally wanting to fail, they will not, I mean, I don't remember giving a 0.
Yeah.
Unless they've intentionally not written anything, unless it's blank.
I'm going to, when we get towards the end, I'm going to change a little bit what I was planning to do. And I'm going to show you a way where students can learn where they are. And it doesn't include a level 1, because no student should ever get level 1 unless they're really trying to get it. And I've got to be, and again, I'm lucky. I'm quite often the head of school or the diploma coordinator, so I get to say what happens. Yeah. Every student has the right to fail. It's enshrined. You have the right to fail. Not every student has the right to get a 7. The only right they have is the right to fail. Yeah. So you've got to really work hard to do badly. It probably takes more work to do badly than it does to do well. Yeah. But if you've got a class of 20, only one of them is going to get a 7. Yeah. On average. Yeah. So that's it. And I think using the frameworks, trying different things, getting the students thinking about it. Today, somebody posted on the Facebook group a list of articles for each topic. Those articles are case studies. Those articles are stems to generate questions, and the questions are already there. You just change the purpose of them. Yeah. And Sumit is right. It's like, as examiners, we've got a narrow base of our own personal knowledge, and we sometimes got to go and just check and look up. Yeah. But the IB, one of the things that's really enshrined from day one in it is that it is not a system of trying to penalize. It's a system of trying to find where. Yeah. So I wouldn't worry too much, Guru. Okay. I wouldn't worry too much about it. If you're giving your students a chance to actually try as many times as possible to attempt these higher order skills, they're going to do okay. They're going to do great. Yeah, they're going to do great. Yeah.
Yes. And another thing, Nigel, is a lot of times as teachers, we chase for these ideal answers, which has received 8 and 9 bands. Let me tell you a drawback with that. Even though during one marking session, if a child has secured, say, 8 to 9 bands for that particular answer, it doesn't guarantee that same child a 7 to 9 mark band in the next session, because it all depends on the level of development, and it changes from person to person. So even if you look at the examples that are given on my IB, so if you look at the examples for C questions, the two examples that I shared on my IB, they are based on the professional judgment of that principal examiner at that particular time. So they do not apply at all to the next session or to the one after.
Yeah. But the general rule within that, rule of thumb within that, is that questions that have analysis, have conclusions, use an example, use terminology well, are going to score 6s and 7s.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I have a question, actually, Nigel. If you would you mind going back to the 7.1 question?
Certainly. Let me go. There we go. That one. Yes.
It is one more back. The 7.1 question about MEDCs and why they haven't switched to renewables. So, in that question, when you are grading a question like this and you're reading an essay, how do we judge how many examples are?
Okay, I remember which one. Sorry.
I think it's a little bit more back. Sorry.
Yes, it is.
I wanted to ask about that earlier, but I didn't. So I'm confused, because when I read that question and I think, I could touch upon Russia, I could touch upon so many things. China, I could touch. I just don't know how much is enough.
Well, I think it's that idea of it, and I think let me just check the guidance. Because it says that it should be it actually says in the guidance about a named country. Strengths and weakness, yeah, for renewables. It actually says in the guidance about a named country. And I'm not quite sure where it says it, but it does say about a named country in it. So as long as it's a named country and you've covered that topic in it, they've already got that foundational knowledge. Yeah. Obviously, it's bringing in this idea of the ecocentric values, which means linking it together. Yeah. And so because of what I'm doing for Extend Education, I'm going to use Bhutan as an example. Yeah. Bhutan exports 70% of its energy to India. It's highly reliant on hydroelectricity. Yeah. Hydroelectricity. Yeah. But the reasons why it does that is that Bhutan is not trying to follow this ecocentric value. It's trying to follow an ecocentric value. Yeah. So if a student's researched Bhutan and you've gone through Bhutan, they'll have all of the information there already. It's the hard bit is pulling that information together into coherence.
Right.
Yeah, so, it's the coherence bit. Yeah.
The thing is, it says like with reference to the energy choices in named countries. So that's why I have trouble, like, you know, how many examples is considered in the top mark band? How many examples are considered in the 4 to 6 mark band? This is the tricky part.
It's not the number of examples, Shalini. It's the quality of treatment.
Yes.
For those examples. So even if the child has given 2 examples, like Saudi Arabia or Russia, for example, right, because it talks about fossil fuel, right? So if they've done enough and say that the infrastructure primarily is more fossil fuel driven than green energy driven,
yeah,
and if they can give that level of treatment to that example, then they're hitting the mark. 1, 2, 3. I mean, there's no specific number. It says named countries, right? So
yes.
Right.
So basically it's more than one, right?
Yeah.
Named countries. Yeah. So it's more than one. So they've given them to play how many countries that they would like. Because, you know, if you talk about Norway, it exports a lot of fossil fuel, but it incentivizes people using electric cars.
Yes.
So it's also an example. It's also an example that the child could use. And we are looking at also sometimes, not all the time, that the way the students are, using examples that are, sort of inventive, like how Nigel gave the example of Bhutan, right? So examples that you don't normally feature, I mean, it's not a requirement. It's just sometimes it's nice to read them, but it's not a requirement.
And there isn't a requirement that they are contrasting either.
No.
But the reality is, if you were going to do it justice in the course, you would have taught contrasting examples. But there isn't a requirement of it. So a student might actually, I've seen students answer, and in the days when when the new guide was being piloted, obviously there wasn't hidden, it wasn't anonymous marking. And I saw a school where it was obvious a student had used their general knowledge. Every other student in the school that had answered the question had answered the question basically around the same case studies. And the student threw in something totally left of center. So it probably came from their general knowledge. So again, it allows for that. So it's not entirely predictive. Yeah. So Archana, you got a question?
Not a question, Nigel, and what Sumit was saying and Shalini is asking. I think this question is set in the comparative nature. It is of comparative nature between some countries. So question specifies that name countries and then discuss. So in that process, automatically child has to compare. So 2 examples will come in automatically. And it can go more also. But you need to focus on those examples which child has chosen. So he has to elaborate on that. I believe that's what Sumit was saying and Nigel was meaning to say.
Archana, they do not necessarily have to compare the countries, but what they have to do is, is to have a balanced discussion. So they have to have an example from the other side as well.
Yeah.
So in order to support their answer. So it's not necessary that they compare Russia with Saudi Arabia or Russia with Norway, but they could present Russia, they could present Saudi Arabia, and then they could talk about how these perspectives, though they are contradicting one another to some extent, or maybe not to all the way. And while for Russia, maybe it's Russia and Saudi, it's more economic. The choice is more economic in nature. So how these perspective balances out each other is what we are looking for, a balanced analysis. A balanced analysis.
So that command term is discuss. So okay,
discuss. If you look, discuss is it's again, as if you look at the Bloom's taxonomy chart, it does say is that you consider other opinions, not just one opinion, but you consider another opinion too, in order to establish the balanced analysis.
Right.
Yeah. So there needs to be a discussion within and in the same with the evaluation questions, there needs to be a conclusion drawn from what you've evaluated. So let me just skip back to where we were.
I think what would help also all our colleagues is to show that flow the chart that Nigel showed, how it went from evaluate to state. I think that is really nice. If you could show this to your students.
I'll skip back to that in a second, Sumit. And what I want to show in the way of that, which brings in both what you say, I just want to show one last little bit, and then I'm going to open up some questions for the last sort of 15 minutes. Let me just skip through. I don't like animations in my slides, so all my changes are basically, it's an entirely new slide each time, so it does sometimes take a little bit longer to skip through. So from the fact that the questions are already there, it is actually quite possible to create brand new questions that have never been asked before. And so I've shared this with you. This is one that I did, and it brings in topic 7. It covers topic 1, and it's about energy choices, security, and sustainability. And I wrote it before that other question had been written. So this was written quite a while ago. This is from 2000. I think I wrote this in 2017, and I've updated the links as we've gone along over the years. There's a little bit of background there about geothermal electricity. There's a little bit of background as well about environmental impacts and things as well, because it's a little bit of trying to bring the environmental impact assessments on it. And the question says, evaluate the use of an environmental impact assessment when considering the advantages and disadvantages of different energy sources in relation to sustainability. And all I did was take 2 stems that were evaluate. One was evaluate the use of EIAs, and the other was evaluate the advantages and disadvantages of energy sources, which is what was in the other question as well, and just tag the word sustainability onto it. And in this one, it uses most of the mark scheme in there, but I also don't always use the entire mark scheme. I might give the students a questions where I only pick out individual strands that I want them to focus on. So I might want them to focus on evidence of the knowledge that they've shown. I might want them to focus on the judgment part of it. So I'll even use individual strands if I think it will help them to understand how to build answers to these questions. In terms of that. So did I break this one down more? I can't remember if I did or not. So what I've done, I haven't quite finished it. I've collected all the questions together. And then I realized I'd totally forgotten about November, because November on another sheet. So I'll add a link to that, and you can go and have a look at them and play with them. Give them to your students. Get your students to take them apart. And to go back, what I'll do to make it quicker for me to go back, I'll stop sharing for a second. I'll come out of my presentation. I'll go back to this and then reshare again. And very, very much get the students to break down. Okay, so what is the difference between evaluate and explain? What's the extra bit you've got to do? And what's the extra bit that's in explain compared to describe? And our students are very, very clever. Not going to use the word intelligent, but they're very clever. And I don't know if anybody's teaching in a state sector school that has the IB that's but the majority of us are teaching in private schools. You can't compare Sweden. It's not the same, Samit. Yeah. Yeah. But in terms of, for the majority of us, most of us are actually dealing with academic athletes. Yeah. We're not having to lead horses to water to force them to drink. They're generally drinking the water already. So you can get them to think about things like this. Yeah. And I think that's really where we get to it, by breaking things down, by deconstructing it, by taking it apart.
Your instincts.
Yeah, by giving the students multiple chances to try and do it. And like I said, that's just my opinion and viewpoint on how I deal with paper 2. Yeah. So in terms of, I said I'm going to show one quick thing before we open it to discussion. Let me just find this a second. Again, it's an idea that I stole. So I have never had an original thought of my own. Let me just find this for 1 second. The disadvantage with having tons of stuff is that you have it all over the place. Where did I put that? Is it on desktop? It might be on my desktop. Topic 1, did I do it this way? Maybe I didn't. Yes, I did. There we go. Okay, I can't show you the PDF. I'll show you the pages document, but it will explain, it will hopefully explain what I'm going to talk about. Okay, there we go. Sorry, guys, for the tides. I hadn't thought about this because it doesn't directly relate. Again, this is an idea I stole off Stephen Taylor. Yeah, and most of these questions actually come from the old guide. They were written before there was a lot of questions available, and most of the questions involved in this are AO1 and AO2, so it's possible to write them from the old guide, but there are higher than it. So there's a describe what a systems approach is. I wrote this for somebody else who was starting off, and I don't teach topic 1 on its own. But I wrote this to show somebody an example of how you could do it with topic 1. And I've got to be honest, it's now, people have asked me for it over the years, so it's now available, so people use it, yeah? Define emergent properties, state 5 classes, compare and contrast, suggest why. On a separate sheet, draw a system diagram, outlining emergent properties. Following diagram, calculate the flows, etc., etc. 10, watch the video and then evaluate the strengths and weaknesses of the prediction, yeah? State which type of system, blah, 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 references in there. And what I use, which again, what I'd say is I stole this from Stephen Taylor, is that the students mark themselves based on the level of the command term. They don't give themselves marks. So if in any command term or any AO, if they get more than 50%, if they think they get more than 50% of those questions right, they give themselves 2 marks. If they think they've got less than 50% of those questions right, they give themselves 1 mark. For the AO2, they do the same, and that adds up to a maximum of 6 marks that they can give themselves. The 6 equates to a 7, the 5 equates to a 6, and all the way down, because there's no such thing as a grade 1. Over the year, they keep track of these themselves on a spreadsheet, and they enter in what they've got, what they think they've got off them. And it does 2 things. One, it identifies command terms that they struggle with and command bands that they struggle with. But also, the students choose their own predicted grade, because this is much more accurate than any other system I've ever come up with to predict grades. because the students are self-assessing themselves against criteria, not against numbers. And over the 2-year spread of the course, they've been asked enough questions in this way that they've got a significant amount of data for them to make that prediction themselves. And very, very rarely do I disagree with their own prediction of their predicted grade. But it's a very quick way to get the students to think about where they are rather than the mark they got, if that makes sense. I'll put this in, I'll share this with everybody as well so you can see it. And it's a really short, and like I said, it's actually in there somewhere. There we go. I stole it and adapted it from Stephen Taylor. Yeah. Okay, that's me finished, guys. There's only 5 minutes left theoretically. I'm happy to stay a little bit longer if Guru's willing to stay up. Yeah, because it's only 9:30 for me. Yeah, so I'm still awake. Yeah, it's not a yeah. So is there any questions at all?
Yes, teachers. Now the question and answer session. So those who have doubts, please raise your hand. We will go one by one.
Any questions, guys?
Okay. Yes, ma'am. Nupur, please go ahead.
Yes. Many of you all have spoken about formulating your own questions. Now, because the subject is in a way wherein there is no one correct answer, how do you justify your marking with respect to the question that you have created?
I get the students to decide what they think is the right answer, what they think their answers are worth.
Okay.
And I'll be honest with you, that is a very powerful way of doing it. So if you get, what you will find is that there will be similarities between all of the questions, because you will have taught them or they will have seen the same case studies, the same examples. So they'll be looking at it, and we sit down as a group and we decide what we think a question is going to be. I don't create a mark scheme beforehand. We create the mark scheme afterwards to try and work out what really needed to be put into that to score the marks. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to say this with all humility. I can get away with that. Yeah. Usually because I'm more important. I'm at a position that's diploma coordinator or more important. Yeah. So I can get away with it quite often. I think in some schools in India, it might be a very difficult thing to try and sell to administration, that you're going to let students mark themselves. But if you let students mark themselves and don't use that to grade them, and then from that develop what you know, all of a sudden you'll start seeing what are really good questions. So you'll start being able to write your own mark schemes for the assessed questions. Yeah. I do not give any grades or any marks at all until Easter of DP1. We only use that system with the 6 marks, because the students have to understand and break it down. All the schools that I've led, we don't give graded reports until at least Easter of DP1. And in fact, we don't give them until June of DP1. We only give 1 graded report a year. All the others are reports based on the criteria and the criteria descriptors that you already have of performance. So can the student analyze? Do they analyze regularly? Well, there are 7. Yeah, you've got those. So it's making a professional judgment. It's much more NYP-like and helps us. So I'm lucky in that, Nupa, yeah? But there's no reason why you couldn't sit down with your students on your formative parts of it and go, guys, you come up with the mark scheme. You've seen the questions I've given you that the IB have marked. What do you think should be? Sit down, yeah? And let them decide what's going to be theirs. What I generally find is students are much tougher on themselves than I am. Yeah. And as Sumit said, examiners tend to be lenient, students tend to be harsh. Yeah. So give the ownership to your students in terms of that. Trying to sell it as a method to actually give grades is a hard thing with your administration. But if they want a consultancy done on learn how to assess, I'm not that expensive. So I'm happy to come in and teach your administration how to do it. Yeah, that's a little bit of a joke. I've got as much work as I can do at the moment. But I hopefully, Nupa, that answers the question a little bit.
Yes, we have next one, Shrikala ma'am. Shrikala ma'am, go ahead. Unmute, madam. You have to unmute.
Actually, what I do is in the guide, there is the criteria for essay. Even if I make questions of my own or if it is from the IB, I don't give them directly the answer scheme. I make them exchange their papers and let them sit and discuss with the criteria how far they have succeeded.
I think that's brilliant. I think that's absolutely
that is what
brilliant.
I do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a much better way of explaining what I was trying to explain. So yeah, but I think that's brilliant. They're very, and I don't know if you find the same, that they're very critical of themselves.
Yes, and then I tell them to do the marking, and then I will do the moderation. That is what I tell them to do.
Yeah.
Like in that way, they really understand what exactly where they lose marks or what examples should be given.
Yeah, ownership, totally. Ownership back to students. Yeah. I don't know if any of you, I don't know how much time you guys have had of looking at like the ATTL documents. And there's one phrase in there that I really like, because I come from I come originally from vocational education. Yeah. I taught forestry skills before I ever taught in a classroom. Yeah. And there's a phrase in there that says we should be moving the students from pedagogy to andragogy, which is what happens in colleges and universities, giving them ownership of that learning. Letting them decide, because I think it's the most powerful way of actually students knowing what to do. So, Shrikala, I think that's it. Yeah. Yeah. And probably saves you a lot of time as well.
Yes, that is what I actually get advantage of.
Yes.
It saves my time.
Yeah. Any other questions,
Nigel,
guys?
It's a good thing. Nigel, another good thing that you shared is to make the mark scheme afterwards, because that's what IB does too.
Yes.
They are actually making the mark scheme after the exam is finished, and it takes at least 15 days for them to release it to the examiners. So that's a normal process. I know in schools in India, because I've worked there, and they expect teachers to hand in the mark scheme along with the question paper beforehand. Yeah. So I know why Nupur was asking that question, because that's a requirement in many schools. So Nupur, to get around that, what you could do is submit the question paper along, but make the mark scheme once you've received the responses from the student. And that's doable. I mean, that could be a feedback that you could share with the diploma coordinator.
Yeah.
But I know that it's a hard sell. I know it's a hard sell in India. It's a very hard sell in India.
Yeah. And it really is. I think if you start doing it formatively before you're doing it summatively, that you then build up this body of evidence that you can go to administration and say, look, this is what we're doing. I'm always agreeing with what they've got. They're doing it better. Actually, don't say they're doing it better than you, because then, we're not needed anymore. Yes, but you get the idea. And I think that's.
But it will also build confidence in the student, in the cohort.
Definitely. And it's interesting when you have those. Shrikala, you've probably seen it, and it is like an examiner's meeting. They disagree. And because they disagree, and they've got to explain to each other where their disagreement comes from. And the insight they create in that is amazing.
Yeah. And we want that to happen, isn't it, Nigel? Because we want them to think.
Yeah,
we want them to think.
It saves me from hearing all the complaints once the papers are given with markings.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Totally. Yeah, it's like you never get that. Yeah, but why did I get this? And why didn't I? Well, you decided why you got it. I didn't.
Yeah. And Nigel, the idea that you have in Indonesia, I think that is something a little bit unrealistic for India, because I'll tell you on behalf of my colleagues, because I worked there not too long ago, and maybe they would agree or disagree, I don't know, but they have to have a grade every semester.
Yes.
Is this correct, Guru? Is that a reality for you? Yeah.
Yes.
So they have to have a grade.
Yeah, I've got the school that I opened in Kerala was inside a CBSE Cambridge board school.
Yes.
And I've got to be honest, I didn't battle, I just did it. Yeah. But nobody on the Indian side of the school could understand what was happening. And my teachers, who quite a few of them taught on the other side in the other school, it's actually two separate schools, but on the same campus, and we share some faculty. They loved being obviously part of the diploma because they didn't have that every 6-7 week cycle of punishing kids by giving them marks.
Trust me, there are schools still doing it.
And it is, there is definitely.
Quite a few big names. Quite a few big names.
In our school, we have to give a grade, but that they are flexible with it. Because if you give evidence that the student has progressed, then we are allowed to change the grade, actually, before we go to the predicted.
Yes.
We have Angela, madam. Angela, ma'am.
Yeah, I was going to ask, I am very new to this. This is my first year teaching ESS. So being first, like I straight away started with my second year. So topic 7, topic 8. That is what I'm doing right now. So how do you actually talk to, as a new teacher, how do you help us navigate, like which topics to take first in? Because it's a whole interrelated. It's not topic wise. It's the whole thing is like interrelated. So how do you go? Like you're talking about going down from questions. Where to start?
How long is a piece of string? And that really to that. And I think what you've got to do, Angela, so like when I taught in Korea, I taught systems and biology at the same time. Now, in September in Korea is the second spring. So that's the perfect time of the year to actually do ecology field work. So I would always start with topic 2 and the ecology unit in biology. So I could have the students together outside. It just happened to be that was based on time. Yeah. Now, when I developed the curriculum, so I trained my teachers in India so I was training an ESS teacher. What was really interesting the kids 2 years ago, probably still the same, was Greta Thunberg. So it makes sense then to start with climate, and especially in Kerala 2 years after the floods. So I think you've got to think about your context. What will engage those students first? What's the thing that's going to work with them? And if you start from that and what I would say is like, I've been doing this for 20 years and I still haven't got it right. So don't punish yourself if you think that you're not making it complex enough. Yeah. That if you did teach it in a linear fashion, you're not going to damage the students. But over time, you'll develop those connections. And as you sit there, and those connections will change. I've got so many folders because I don't ever use the same resource twice because a new news story comes along. It's something different each year. I'll read something. My opinion changes about stuff. Yeah. I'll find a different way of doing something. So don't worry that you're doing it wrong. But we can, all of us, always improve what we do. And if you're always trying to improve, you'll get to a stage where it becomes such a joy to teach the subject, you don't understand why anybody wants to teach anything else. Yeah.
Fantastic. We have people from Mexico also. Okay, Ashley, madam, please go ahead. Ma'am, we cannot hear you. No, madam, we cannot hear you.
No, sorry.
Maybe you can put it on the Chat box, ma'am. May please put it on the chat box. Yes, ma'am. Shambhuka Priya, ma'am, go ahead.
Sir, I would like to gain tips about the time management skill for this paper too.
Good question.
Time management is
because
always
my students was not able to complete those essay type questions within the stipulated time, and they are lagging, so they are not able to score better marks.
That's a hard one to answer easily. Below diploma, what curriculum has your school got?
Previously, our school is having Cambridge A's and A-level, and right from last year, we are with IB curriculum across the grades.
Okay, it will, right, my one thing in that is that it will change. And you are going to have this lag because Cambridge works. I hate it, but it works. Yeah. And, but it doesn't have the conceptual depth that diploma has. So if a student goes through IGCSE, unless the school does more than the exam system, there's no imperative for the students to be forced to think or be forced to summarize or think deeper. Yeah. So you've got to start finding ways to make that possibility. Yeah. I would say use questions to teach rather than to measure. And just go, guys, you've got 5 minutes. That's it. Yeah. I don't know how well this would work. One of the things I love doing, I play basketball while I teach. Yeah. So you stand in the middle of the circle and you bounce a basketball at them. And whoever you bounce the basketball at, they've got to answer the question immediately. And then you've got to bounce the ball back. And then you've got to bounce the ball again. And things like that, anything you can do to try and speed up their thinking processes. Yeah. But they'll get there. They will get there. Yeah. If you're building on top of a Cambridge foundation, it's going to be a little bit slower than, say, building on top of an NYP foundation, possibly. Yeah. But just by continually going through it, modeling it. Yeah. Going, okay. Get a little buzzer, stick it in there, give them the time. Yeah. 1.5 minutes per mark. Yeah. Do an assessment as individual questions. This is a 1 mark. Minutes. Go. Stop. Hand in the question. This is a 2 mark question. You have 3 minutes. Start. Stop. Take in the air. Anything you can think of to try and get them to think in terms of that. Yeah. That's
a brilliant. We have a last one. Jitin sir, go ahead, sir.
Actually, I was having a big confusion with the fact that, a certain number of time I don't have a stipulated time duration to teach a unit. So what I prefer to do is I just take the subject guide that I have for that particular unit, and I just copy it and paste it in the Word file, and I extend it and I leave a lot of gap between them. And I ask my student to scribble a lot towards that.
Yes,
that's very
brilliant.
disgusting. So is that way is perfectly fine. And second thing is, like, is it like that the IB does not allow to copy paste the way I have copy pasted in a Word file and giving them as a sheet to the students and the students scribbling on it?
The IB allows you inside your own school to use those resources as teaching resources. What it doesn't allow you to do is turn around and share them outside of the school. So as long as they're for your students, that is not a problem at all. And the IB would encourage you to do that. I'm going to go off topic a little bit in this. You said you don't have enough time for the unit. Do you have the stipulated number of hours over the 2 years?
No, a certain number of cases, like in my school, we have lesser number of students, and all of a sudden there was a fact that they all got COVID positive, and their parents were not sending their children to school. And because of all those issues, we were not having the adequate number of hours. So keeping that in mind, it was a bit difficult, and the students were very weak to, work on. So there were a lot of confusions, and the previous teachers also have not taught also. I've just recently joined in the between.
Right. Okay. I feel for you in that. So if it's a situation that was caused only by COVID, hopefully it will change. If it was there before COVID, during your next evaluation, your 5-year evaluation, raise it as a question, as a matter of concern, especially if you've got an evaluation visit. If it's a self-evaluation and there's no visit, it's a bit harder to do, but you should be having the minimum of the stipulated hours. That's one thing. Now, one of the things that I do, remember I said I really believe in kind cruelty. Yeah. If I'm in a situation where I know students have done, think of the most food webs, food chains, I don't teach it. You've done it. Guys, you did it last year. I'm not going to teach you again. You sat an exam on it possibly, yeah? So things that I know they've covered in the past, I try not to teach a second time. So there's big chunks. I'm lucky, I tend to be in NYP school. So I know, so we tend to prepare students, particularly for certain units coming up and things like that, in a way, yeah? But you can speed up things that are just statements. I don't teach any of the definitions. I just give them those. Yeah, things that they have to be able to draw. Well, they go away. And I'm a great believer in you draw it every day for a week, and then once a week for a month, and then once a month for a year, and then every year, then you know it. Yeah. So I get the students to try to do that. Yeah. So I think there are ways to create extra time, but if you're short of time, that is something that you need to continually raise with it. And I know it's difficult sometimes to raise it with administration. Yeah, but keep pressing about it, keep pressing about it, keep pressing about it.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
That's a different perspective. We have Shivani ma'am. Shivani ma'am, go ahead.
Hi, Nigel.
Hi, Shivani.
Being a fresher, can you just give us some handy tips how to go with a paper 2? Some handy tips, especially for the essay questions.
Do lots of them. Do as many long, even if you're creating your own and you're not quite sure that they're really real essay questions, you won't be very far off. Yeah, they won't be that dissimilar to be doing any damage. So I think that's the main thing, is that the more chance you have of using those. So I would say, and this is why I threw up this idea of the 32%. 32% of your teaching time should be doing those questions, at least.
How about putting a flow chart and doing an answer?
Yeah, or modeling it, all sorts of ways, yeah. Try and find things.
Venn diagrams, flow charts, spider diagrams.
Any way at all that you can get the students to break it down. Like I said, I have my system that works for me.
It becomes too monotonous to write these descriptive answers. So
yeah, totally.
If at all we put a graphic organizer and just put the answer and annotate it and then go more descriptive. How about it?
If you remember what I did when the one I said when I put the mark scheme in the center and the students write around it, they don't write the answer. I don't need them to write the answer. They're trying to find where the answer would have come from.
The diagram kills the time, Nigel. It takes the time.
And it does. Yeah. So you don't always need to be writing complete paragraph answers. Yeah. Getting them to mind map it, to do these. Like I said, the system I have works for me in the way that I teach. Yeah. And that's a combination of what I think in the way that my brain works and trying to think of things that have worked well for my students in the past.
So that's the question. No 5 fingers are same. So I need to.
Yeah. So try to. The other thing I would say, and this I really believe in this, don't try too many things. If you're going to try assist something out, so say you're going to use flowcharts to try and break it down. Use that for at least a month, probably 2 months. And don't try another method. Just stick with that, because all these methods, they're going to take time to embed. Yeah.
That's a fantastic.
Yeah.
So we have couple of teachers want to say the vote of thanks. And Nigel, some of the teachers asking your phone number and then your LinkedIn connection. Hope I can share with everyone.
Guys,
sir, we need one more session with Nigel. That's the first request.
Yes, ma'am. We are working on it. So Nigel, I can share your phone number and contact details, everything to all the teachers. That will work for you.
I don't use WhatsApp. I hate it. Yeah, I know India's obsessed with it. Indonesia's I hate the thing. Yeah, I really, really hate it. What I will do, Guru, if you share my email address with everybody.
I can share.
Yeah.
And LinkedIn also. You're active in LinkedIn.
LinkedIn, yeah. If you're in the Facebook group for ESS, you can easily contact me through that as well. But what I'll do is I like Slack. I really, really like Slack. Yeah. And it sort of works. Again, it works for me. Yeah. But I'm quite happy to set up a Slack group. Yeah. And if people want to ask questions or anything like that, so I'll share a Slack link if people want to. And Guru, if you can pass that on to people if Guru passes it on via WhatsApp, you guys will get it. But if I said I'm going to do it by WhatsApp, you'll never get it. Yeah, I hate it. I really hate WhatsApp. Yeah, it's like this stream of information that I just can't keep up with. Yeah, but I'm always happy to take questions. I'm always happy to throw in advice. It's like they're from my opinions, but in this room, you've also got other people with like Sumit has brilliant stuff about how the exam works is way beyond what I know at the moment, because I'm not marking right now. Yeah. And Achana's said some really great stuff in there about the way that she's actually building the stuff together. Shrikala about, I really love that idea about making your life easier as a teacher by letting the kids do all the work. Yeah. That's what it's really about. Yeah. So in terms of what I've seen here, there's loads of stuff. Yeah. And I am an IB person because the IB is a community. So just reach out to people. Just ask. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks.
But we are a couple of teachers who want to say the vote of thanks. So before I start, I would like to say, Nigel, one word about the session. Wow. I hope everyone agreed that one. Wow. That's a one word actually. Actually, in fact, I was thinking, oh my God, today I'm going to miss the India-New Zealand match. I think this session is more than India-New Zealand match. Your session is more than Dabang 3 climax. Okay. That kind of Dabang 3 climax is only 10 minutes, but it's 2 hours. Everyone was sitting and enjoying the thing.
I'm gonna admit something. I really hate IPL. I really hate it. I yearn for the days when cricket was 3 days long. Yeah, when it was proper cricket, when everybody wore white and you had cucumber sandwiches. I really miss proper cricket. And IPL is not. IPL is rounders. It's So sorry, guys. I'm sorry. I'm sorry. But I know. Sitting there, it's like. Everybody obviously in Kerala was obsessed with it, and I'm sitting there waiting like, please, I want the days of Sir Garfield Sobers back. So yeah, I do understand the obsession though.
Oh, and then especially Sumit sir, thank you very much for joining. It's actually Nigel and Sumit sir is like an Virat Kohli and Dhoni smashing the Pakistan match. So that kind of the thing we have enjoyed it. we have a couple of teachers. Angela, madam, please go ahead with your feedback. Angela, madam, your session experience.
Yes, I would say thank you so much, Nigel and Sumit. It was so much insightful for me because I came with a lot of expectation because I haven't even taught the syllabus once, I've just done 1.5 units. That's it. So it's so insightful. And I like the small tips on kind cruelty. Okay. And the small tips of Sumit also on how do examiners look at it? And, deconstructing mark scheme with the help of a guide. So all the answers are in essential skills, the skills and key understanding. So it's so good to make kids understand that. And I'm so blessed, actually. Thank you so much. I don't know. I don't have words to say thanks.
Thank you, Angela. Thank you. I'm gonna put in a quick advert for the IB, and I hope some of you probably back me up on this. The best professional development you can have is to become an examiner. It's really, really good professional development. Yeah, it really helps out there. The pay is terrible, but the professional development is great. Yeah, the professional development is really, really good. So, and I got to be honest, I don't, because I do so many other things, I don't always have the time. But in the years when I doubt myself, those are the years when I mark, because it helps me reset. And so, if you've not marked before, mark. If you mark something we don't do enough, as a school leader, the gratitude that I have for people that give up their time to mark is boundless. So please, please, please volunteer to mark. It's great professional development. You can learn so much from it.
Yes.
I also want to thank you. 1 minute. I want to thank you, sir, Guru sir, because for organizing this. It takes a lot of effort to do that and to get all of us as an IB community. Thank you so much for investing your time on us youngsters. Yes. Thank you.
We have Shrikala, madam. Please go ahead with your session feedback, ma'am.
Before I thank Nigel and Sumit, I just want to ask one question. One question only. It's very short. It won't take time.
Yes, ma'am.
Is there anything about academic dishonesty while writing the essays? You know why? Because in our school, when we do these formative assessments, we give it on Manage-Back. And it is compulsory that we put the Turnitin report, the tick on the Turnitin report. And it always shows for all students like 20, 21, 30. What do you do about it?
Ignore Turnitin.
Ignore.
Okay. Because if you think, I'm gonna from somebody with a background in statistics, Turnitin can only look for similarity.
Okay.
So I've had students have massive matches in extended essays because their referencing was good quality referencing, using good sources, and it was done perfectly.
Okay.
So that's all it can do. It can only look for matches. Yeah.
Okay.
Now, if a student is cheating, and I've got to be, again, it's a side view on this. I don't believe students try to cheat. I believe cheating happens for reasons. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But if they're trying to cheat, the only person that are actually cheating is themselves. Okay. It's the same thing when students work with tutors and they're getting tutors they come along and they get to the exam and they can't write the answer. Yeah, they're fooling themselves. So I don't try not to worry too much about it. But again, if that's the policy in your school, you've got to live with it a little bit. But maybe the way to do it is actually, do the students have access to Turnitin themselves?
No. We have to give the report to them.
Okay.
We download it and give it to them.
Because Turnitin can be quite a powerful tool if the students are using it as well, yeah, because it helps with their writing. And yeah, it's one of those really, really hard things. If you have, again, it's an aside from this, if you've not read the latest advice on academic integrity, go and read the document because it actually outlines what the IB does.
Okay.
And it's interesting because most schools are much more severe about this than the IB are.
Okay.
Yeah, because what the IB is saying is that students should make a good attempt to reference. Okay. It doesn't have to be perfect, but they should try and show where everything's come from. Yeah. In terms of collusion and copying, that's a little bit different. Yeah. But I've also seen students who've memorized entire passages, more so in biology, entire passages from the textbook, hoping that question is going to come up. And I'm going to be very sexist for a second, but it's true. There are girls that tend to, and it's girls because boys are too lazy, that will try and memorize pages of a textbook and then try and write everything in the hope that it's going to meet the marks. Amazing what a change was having those boxes around the answers.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know students can still get unlimited paper if they want to, but and you'd see questions you guys must have seen it yourselves, where students have written, trying to write everything they possibly can. Yeah. To me, again, that's as bad as they're doing themselves a disservice. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. The sexist bit in that actually wasn't the girls. It's the fact that boys are lazy. We just are. We're just very, very lazy.
Okay. I'm really thankful for the wonderful session you gave. I mean, it was quite different from the usual sessions where, it's just to say how to do it, how to do this, or an explanation. It was those tips which you and even Sumit gave, which are really helpful in the long run. And I never expected that I would actually get an opportunity to meet you virtually, because I was the one who used to always use your earlier books on ESS when the subject was new.
Thank you.
So I really thank even Mr. Guru for giving us this opportunity to meet and share all these information.
Thank you, man. And Nigel, she is joining from Africa. She's from one from Africa. Thank you, madam.
Shikala, where are you in Africa?
I'm in Gabon.
Okay.
In the British school. It's a British school run by the First Lady.
Stay very safe.
Oh, yeah, sure.
Very safe.
Okay, I'll come to Azilem 1 minute. We have Mosami Mishra, ma'am. Ma'am, go ahead with your session feedback, ma'am.
Yeah, thank you, sir. Thank you. I think the session was just amazing, I should say. And I'm also a paper 2 examiner. And what I gathered here from Nigel and Sumit and also Archana and some of my colleagues, it's a very balanced way that Sumit also unfolded the facts like about examples and how the quality matters and all. I'm really I should say I never expected after so many years of experience also. I do agree that sometimes ESS teachers, we struggle because most of the time the students that we have, they don't take up ESS as of that they have the interest, but they take it up as a filler subject most of the time. And there where we struggle as teachers, I use a struggle because it's difficult to push them when they they just take it as a subject, not out of their passion. So there
Machina, can I throw something in there? And I think this is quite important for us all to think about. What you say is very, very true. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
And we're quite often the last choice after standard level biology.
Yes.
But our results are better. So we must be doing a great job.
Yes.
Yeah, we must be, because our results are better than standard level biology.
Yeah, that's what, and I love the way you connected the Bloom's cascade and also taking it up, like Sumit said, inductive way of teaching. Yes, sometimes we do miss out focusing on the higher order questions, being more towards the lower order questions. I think we also as educators, we need to change that part. And coming to the Turnitin point, what just now she pointed out, I think as subject teachers, we ourselves can be the best Turnitin for them, because we know individually where our student stands, and we completely know what and how the work has come from. So that I myself believe that the way I can judge the student, what he has written, he or she has written, I think even the Turnitin cannot do that way. And we can check on the academic integrity that way, being a little liberal and trying to, of course, many schools do enforce on Turnitin status for every assessment. That part is there. It's a brilliant session, I should say. It's especially like paper 2 it has a maximum weightage when it comes to ESS assessment. And we as educators, we need to understand that part, and this session has been really amazing. And thank you, Nigel, thank you, Sumit, and all my colleagues, and a very special thanks to Guru sir for arranging these sessions, and we expect to have more engaging sessions this way in future. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we have a last one, Azela and Jitan. I'm coming. Poonam, madam, please go ahead with your session feedback.
Thank you, Guru sir. First and foremost, I would like to thank Nigel for this enlightening session. We are really lucky to have had this opportunity to interact with you. We've learned so much actually today from your 20 years of experience in this subject. Thank you so much, firstly, for sharing resources on the ESSpedia, where I normally see your resources, and also teaching us today how to scaffold the learning for our students. All of us present here today, I'm sure already 4 people have spoken, how we really appreciate your giving us tips to tackle the tricky parts of paper 2 and train our students. And, I had never thought, I don't know how many teachers, but I had never aimed for a 7 for my students. But after this session, I find that, yes, I can also aim for a 7 in ESS. Thanks for drawing our attention to the importance and relevance of the ESS guide. I'm sure that the tips that you've given today and the advice will be really useful, not only for the teachers who are new to this subject, but also to teachers who've been teaching this subject for many years. I'm so amazed that the way Sumit sir actually jumped in from time to time, and we could learn so much more from his expertise also, because he's an examiner of paper 2, and the way he's broken up the 9-mark question and the answer, the criteria and all that, and he made it made us understand it in such a beautiful way. Thank you, Sumit sir. Thank you so much for your input. And last but not the least, of course, our very own dear Guru sir for organizing these sessions. Thank you so much, Guru Charan sir, and I hope you do this more often.
Yeah, can I jump in a second? Sumit, I am so grateful you were in the room today, because I would have butchered what you put into eloquence. I would have actually, because I don't mark often enough anymore. But I'm also very grateful that Sumit was here, who, I would have said too many words and butchered it.
Yeah, no, I think Nigel. Thank you, Sumit sir.
Yeah, I think, Nigel, your critical perspective is important. That is what is keeping the subject alive in the IB. And let me tell you, on behalf of all these colleagues who are here, I know many of them have spent 2 to 3 hours of their time here today. And many of them, I know as a matter of fact, that it's very difficult to put yourself on a workshop.
Yeah.
Because many schools do not, invest money in that kind of in that kind of way. And I think this platform really helps a lot of those colleagues, because this is individual investment of time, Nigel.
Totally.
And this is basically I could only sense gratitude.
Yeah.
And I mean, this I've come from that journey.
Yes.
So I know where all my colleagues are at the moment, and how difficult it is, because we have to battle with mindsets that the subject is a wannabe science. It's because I don't care about anything else. That's why I want to take this. So there's lots.
Yeah.
So there's lots.
It's very, very much that, Sumit. I think I had a thought actually, and I don't know. I'm a little bit obsessed with the origins of the IB. And I don't know how many people actually realize, not my obsession, but what I'm going to say. So 3 people were really instrumental in the IB coming about. We've all heard of Kurt Hahn. Yeah. And so Kurt Hahn's input into developing the United World Colleges, where Alex Peterson went and taught, gave rise to the IB. But there was somebody else as well who's really, really instrumental with it, a guy called John Kumara. Yeah. And John was Belgian and had been in the Belgian resistance in the Second World War and was imprisoned in Dachau and tortured in Dachau. Now, the 3 things that they all have in common is that Kurt Hahn was a Jew and an educator who escaped from Germany after being imprisoned himself. Alex Peterson was in the British Army and British Army intelligence in Malaysia and saw the excesses of what the Japanese had done. And John Gumra, because obviously he'd been imprisoned himself. That's where the IB mission statement comes from, about making the world a better, more peaceful place. It comes from those three guys. But a connection that doesn't really come out. Each one of them was a friend of Hermann Hesse. And I don't know how many of you know, and each one of them had read Siddhartha. And each one of them was on the cusp of the time, and the IB came along at the growing interest in the West into Eastern culture. I've argued for such a long time that the syllabus and curriculum for India is the IB, because it's what Brahminic education probably was. It's about discussion, it's about discourse. But on top of that, and I'm going to move a slight step sideways, any country is the wrong word because you're 27 countries, yeah? But any place that can give rise to Jainism and Buddhism is the perfect place for ESS. So you're doubly honored as a nation as having a major influence on, well, triply honored, major influence on the development of the IB and some of the thought processes behind it. Mindfulness has returned to the IB. It used to be there a long time ago. Yeah. Part of CAS was about mindfulness. TOK has always been about mindfulness. Yeah. That came from that Eastern philosophical root.
Yeah.
Which means it's perfectly there. But you've got that. But also, if any nation in the world could really do with the effect that ESS can have on students, it is probably India.
Yeah. And there's so many examples, Nigel. And I really urge all my colleagues to use not the Eurocentric, not the colonial examples. Use the examples that we have in the country, because that's more authentic, because your students would connect with those examples. I mean, they would have this reaction, meh, I mean, I don't care. I mean, if it's not about the immediate world, and it's nicer because they can look at a local example from a global lens. So I always urge all my colleagues to use the local examples, use the Sundarbans, use the Western Ghats.
Yes,
talk about, we have so many wildlife sanctuaries in India. And there's so many beautiful examples that you can extract from them. We have the deserts, we have the Himalayas, which has a different climatic condition. I think
what's going to happen? What's going to happen when the Ganges dries up?
Yeah, there are many
so
such
much,
examples.
Yeah,
drying up, already drying up. Sorry to. Yeah, it is intermittently. It is dried up.
Yeah, and it is. Yeah, so you've got such a rich. You've got
case study,
a rich case study outside every door that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whether you're in a school that's in a suburban setting, a rural setting, or an urban setting, fully urban setting, you've got so much around you that you can build everything. I really dislike the Sustainable Development Goals. I really dislike them. Yeah. But I really loved the idea of think global, but act local.
Excellent.
And if you do the same for the subject, every example that you can find is either going to be next door or 2 doors away, rather than having to go and look at you're right. Totally, Sumit, you're right. I really believe that we've got to get away from eco-colonialism.
Yeah.
I can't tell you guys what the answer is for vegetation in anywhere, because I don't understand it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think you have to play your strength. I think teachers have to play your strength. I think when you display your strength, for example, one of the teachers said that they used the syllabus guide and put it on a Word file. I think, was it you, Jiten?
Yes.
Yes. So it's perfectly all right. Use your strength. There's no one right way to do this. And this is what we're trying to teach our children. And look at the bigger goals. Look at the smaller ones, the smaller AO ones are fine. They're fine and great, but it's the bigger one. It's the big picture that we want them to be able to see, and many of you have schools in very beautiful locations. I mean, just use them as your examples. to study, because that's the best way. Because I think that will give them the authentic examples for paper 2 essay questions, which is the whole idea for today.
Okay.
And I think, and I'm not sure who said it, it might have been Angela, I'm not entirely sure who said it, is that I understand how much training costs in India. Yeah. It's, and I'll give you the difference. You can probably work this out. As diploma coordinator in Korea, my budget for training each year was round about $160,000. I can open a school in India for that. Yeah. So the differences are massive. But so much of the training that is out there for the IB, we tend to do it for evaluation and accreditation and things. Yeah. The stuff you get the best is when you sit down and talk to other people that are in the same situation as you, or different situations, who come with different ideas. You learn much more then. Yeah. You learn so much more then. And it's like,
100%.
I've been doing this for 20 years and I still haven't got it right.
We have 2 more teachers, Nigel.
Okay.
Teacher, there's one coincidence. I don't know how many of you know. Do you know tomorrow is the paper 2 exam for November session? Tomorrow is the paper 2 exam for this year November session. Azila, madam, can you able to hear? Can you talk? Can you hear? Now, can you talk? Unmute yourself.
I can hear you, but I don't know if you can hear me.
Yes,
Azila, yes. Wonderful.
And thank you for joining from Mexico.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. Hello there. I'm from Mexico. I'm Azalia. And yeah, I'm almost new. I have already completed 1 class, but since we were in pandemia, well, it is like it counts, but it doesn't at the same time.
Yeah.
Because we were virtual most of it, a year and a half. So it has been really, really, really difficult, but it has shown like a new opportunity. I have gone better a lot on my slides, but now taking after this, I know that I need to go back to the guide. So I'm really excited about that. I want to thank you as well. I want to thank you as well for all the tips you gave us, for the scaffolding class you gave us about the cows. I'm going to steal it as well. So thank you for that. And yeah, I'm going to start doing my kids to print their guides and to start adding notes around it. So thank you for so much for everything, because both of you have been a guide for all of us, the new teachers. So thank you.
And
I really
and I'll be honest, you've got a resource that we don't have. Yeah, you've got access to the Spanish material as well, and that enriches it in a way that je parle un peu de français, yeah. So I stumble through the French versions when the exam is done in French and pull bits out of it. But you've got this other rich set of material there that's also in. And I know some of the people that do the translations. Any of the material that's available in Spanish is much more precise than it is in English. Much, much more. Because the reason sometimes guides take ages is when they've got to translate them into Spanish or French, that's when the arguments really start about what a word means. Yeah. Speaking English, we're very lazy with our language. With the French and the Spanish are not lazy with language. So you guys have a very, very tight. So use the Spanish resources as well. They're so rich.
I will find out. I will research, because I have no idea where to find them. Like, the community here is not that strong, to be entirely honest.
What school? Which school are you in?
UPAEP.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard. I don't know anybody in there, but I've heard. Yes. So send me an email, and I'll put you in touch with a couple of the schools in Barcelona and Mallorca and places like that have ESS, and you can so you can cross-pollinate.
And Azelia, apply to become a Spanish examiner.
Yes, they want to
apply to become, and I urge everybody who's here, apply to become an examiner. If you are an examiner, get involved, get your hands dirty, try qualifying, try failing qualification, try everything. because I think the reason I've been able to understand and unpack this very well at this stage is it's because of the fact that I was an examiner and I have been deeply involved with it. And I mean, it's just fantastic. The kind of learning that it brings is just fantastic. The opportunities in ESS are far more than biology.
Yeah.
If you have a very quick chance to grow faster in ESS marking than in biology marking. Biology marking is a meat market. It's really a meat market because it's a lot of people and everybody thinks that they're biologists and there's lots and lots of people there.
Yes.
So I would say go ESS and it will really open up a different world. And here's the thing, we are constantly updating. We're constantly updating. Now, if you are a person teaching from the textbook, you're probably teaching the students the Millennium Development Goals and not the Sustainable Development Goals. So try to stay on top of things.
Yeah.
So that you can do only with.
I'm going to throw in something there as well. Is one of the things to think about. Okay, at the moment is that in 2 years' time you will have a higher level course as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Now that is written entirely. Like I said, I hate the Sustainable Development Goals for one particular reason. They include the word economics in them, and but the entire guide is written from the Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah. I can't change your opinion, Nigel, but I just want to say there's somebody who comes from the periphery of the world, which is dealing with the economic dilemma at the cost of environment. I think economics do play a role. I mean, as much as
what I hate about it is knowing that bit of it will be the driver and not the rest of it.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, it is, and it is a dilemma that a lot of people here as well in this session are also dealing with.
We have one more last teacher, but before Sumitsa, I agree about the examiner. I totally agree. Especially, I am also an examiner. The only time actually, whenever the seeding, I pass the seeding, the butterflies flies in my stomach. I love that experience. Whenever you have actually passed the seeding, okay. When I see that message, 1,000 butterflies flies in my stomach. Okay, I like that experience. That's the reason I'm an examiner. Last one, we have a Jitin sir. Jitin sir, go ahead, sir.
I'll just take a few minutes, just a couple of minutes. I just wanted to thank you people. It's literally the great session that I had, the previous one by Guru sir, next by Nigel sir, and then finally Sumit sir pitching up. Actually, I was not well and my family members were telling just to take a sleep on the bed. And on that there was no internet in my locality. I came to my new construction house. And all of it was literally fruitful, Thank you, Jitin. There's no word for that. Yeah, thank you very much.
Jitin. Thank you, Jitin. While we're talking about examiners, the other thing to do as well, which I prefer marking the IAs to marking papers. That's a personal preference of mine. Marking the IAs has given me more ideas about IA ideas for my students than I could ever think up. And especially if you come from the sciences side of it, marking the IAs will show you IAs that are not science-based. And if you come from the group 3 individual societies background, you'll get to see the opposite side of it. So it's a really great way to improve and enrich the IAs that your students do, because you can throw ideas at them of things you've seen. I've seen so many great ideas over the years. Yeah. So I'd encourage people to do that. But I think it can be painful marking the IAs. Yeah, it can be quite painful. And extended essays as well. Extended essays are such a joy to mark.
Extended essay, I have marked for the last few sessions and they've been absolutely delight because they are the true manifestation of the interdisciplinarity that the subject has to offer. So again, I urge everybody, apply to become an examiner. It will open up so many doors. I mean, and that has been my experience at least. So I would urge you guys to apply. And I've seen you in the IA teams, Nigel. I have seen I saw your name popping up.
I don't do much because I do other bits and pieces for the, I'm not going to tell you what I do, but for the next couple of weeks, I'm very, very busy.
Okay.
So, yeah. And so some people get what that means. So I do things like that. I'm an assessment analysis consultant with the IB, which is where the numbers bit comes from sitting down and actually taking the papers apart to work out why, blah, blah, blah. But there is such a wealth out there of stuff. But the most important part of the IB is the grassroots that you guys are. Without that, there is no IB. Yeah. It's so, so important. Yeah. And yeah, I know that you guys get less chance to get to conferences than people in some other countries and stuff, but there's no reason why you can't organize your own local job alikes, why you can't just get together as a group. And I know travel and things like that is still it's still not great in India at the moment, and the situation's not perfect and everything, but those are great opportunities. Yeah. Just if you're in the same city, go out for a coffee or a tea or something and go and sit as a group and chat about things. If you don't have anybody to moderate within your own school, join up as 3 schools together. Your schools might not like it, but your schools don't always have to know about it. I didn't say that, by the way. Yeah. So, but there is plenty of ways to connect. Summit's right, work is right. And I've really enjoyed this evening. I am going to run away though, because it's 10:30 here. And I've got to go fingerprints in the morning, not because I've stolen anything. I'm waiting I've got this year's visa run to do tomorrow. So I've got to go and fingerprints first thing in the morning.
Nigel, if you could wait, we can talk after just 2 seconds.
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you very much, teachers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. It's so good. And yeah, Guru will share my email. Send me an email and I'll share a Slack link as well with Guru. And if you've never used Slack before, it's really dead simple. It's much easier than WhatsApp. And it's, so.
Sumit, sir, can we also have your phone number and the email?
Ma'am, you have a surprise, madam, next month. It is coming. Okay. Don't worry. You have a surprise is waiting from Sumit sir for next month. Okay. Thank you.
Guru sir always has a bundle of surprises for us, and we are just waiting for that.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. Sumit sir, Nigel sir, please wait. Others can go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you, teachers.
Thank you, guys. It's been a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.